It's my honor to be able to introduce to you today a speaker who is well known by many of you. He is a successful businessman who has started, built, and managed or turned around 22 companies. He's also one of America's foremost authorities on peak performance and individual achievement. And he addresses over 250,000 people worldwide every year. Since he began recording and taping his material, he's become one of the most listened to professional speakers in the world. His audio and video programs have been translated into 20 languages and are heard in over 38 countries. He's the author or narrator of such best-selling audio programs as Psychology of Achievement, Psychology of Selling, Psychology of Success, as well as The Science of Self-Confidence, How to Master Your Time, How to Start and Build Your Own Successful Business, and get this, more than 250 video training programs on leadership, sales, and personal performance. He's written 34 books, been translated into 23 languages. He's the creator of the personal coaching system Focal Point. He's traveled and worked in more than 80 countries, and he speaks 4 languages. He was the chief operating officer of a $265 million development company. He's active in community affairs. And probably the most important thing for Brian is that he's married with 4 children, and of course he is the president of 3 companies headquartered in Solana Beach, California. It is a great privilege for me. I just met him for the first time today, so I'm excited to hear from him as well in person. Please welcome to the Weekend Leadership event, Mr. Brian Tracy.
I love you guys. Thank you. Sit down. Please sit down. I have some good news for you. More people are going to make more money in the next few years and become millionaires than in all the years of American history. And 80% of those people, 4 out of 5, are going to be people like yourself who own their own businesses and who come to these seminars. And my job is to help you to be one of those millionaires, and your job is to learn what you need to learn and to apply. Is that a good goal for our 2.5 hours together? Say yes. Now, when Kyle invited me to come here to speak, he said, you know, this is a very, very high-class audience. It's a very elite group. They're in the top 5 or 10% of people in America. He said they're all millionaires. And so I want you to know it's a real big honor to be here with so many millionaires, because what I've discovered since I got here this morning is that everybody here is a millionaire, or you intend to be in the future. Is that correct? Say yes. Okay. Now, I can't tell you how important that is, because future intention determines present action. Please remember this. Future intention determines present action. If you decide you're going to leave this convention center and you're going to drive to San Diego, it will tell you what turn you will take when you go out of the hotel, and at the next corner and the next corner. Every single step you take in the short term will be determined by where you're heading for. If you decide you're going to go to San Francisco, you will take totally different turns. Are you with me so far? So therefore, future intent determines present action. I work with Bill Danko, and Bill Danko is the co-writer of The Millionaire Next Door. He has spent his entire life, 30 years, studying self-made millionaires. I have been reading his stuff like a person chasing after him. I've been reading their stuff and their research all this period of time to find out about self-made millionaires. And what I found out is some very interesting things. First of all, they all have certain qualities in common. Second of all, nobody started off with any of these qualities. Third of all these qualities are learnable. Can anybody here drive a car? It's a rhetorical question. Don't raise your hand. I know you're really tired. You had a long night. Well, if you can drive a car, you can learn any business skill. You can learn any financial skill. If you can drive a car, you can learn enough to become a self-made millionaire. In the year 1900, there were 5,000 self-made millionaires in America. By the way, all millionaires in America, almost all, are self-made. When I was young, I used to feel sorry for myself because I didn't have any money. Wah, 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 wah. And then I found that nobody has any money. Everybody starts off broke. As a matter of fact, if you look at what the Founding Fathers wrote, the Founding Fathers designed America to be a country where people could come with nothing, basically with satchels of everything they owned off a boat at Ellis Island, and they could start off here and by working hard, and as Chris said, by developing character and talent and working hard, telling the truth, and paying as little taxes as possible, they could eventually become prosperous and successful, if not millionaires. So don't feel sorry for yourself, by the way, if you started off with difficult circumstances. Now, I'm going to get off the track a little bit here, but first point is this, is everybody starts off broke. Most Americans like broke so much they keep going back to it throughout their adult lives, you know, like visiting the old hometown. But here's the point, and there's a wonderful line from Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio once said, you know, there's no rich men's sons in the major leagues. He said they don't have the stomach for it. He said they don't have the hunger. They don't have the guts. They don't have the drive. He said rich men's sons grow up soft. He said all the hitters in the major leagues grew up hard. So if you had a difficult childhood and you didn't have a lot of money and your mommy and daddy didn't love you the way you wanted them to love you and so on, if you had a difficult childhood coming up, you should thank God every single morning because it's given you the character and the guts and the determination and the grit that will enable you to be successful. Yes. It's the worst thing that can happen is to grow up easy. Grow up hard. If you grow up hard, then you'll always be able to bounce back because you've done this before. Anyway, so there were 5,000 millionaires in 1900. In the year 2000, there were 5 million. By the year 2010, 2020, there'll be 10 or 15 million millionaires. And your job is to be one of those millionaires, and my job is to get you there. Now, here's a question. How many people like to double their income? You say yes? Okay. If I could show you how to do it, would you give it a try? Now, that is a test question. It's the only test question of the day. Do you know what the average number of times is that a person tries on a new goal before they give up? It's less than 1. Most people give up before they try it even once. Is they say, I'm going to set a new goal and I'm going to dedicate myself to doing this and more of this, less of that. They hear these wonderful talks by Jim and Dennis and Chris, and you hear these wonderful talks. They think, well, I'm going to make some decisions. But most people don't even try the first time. They talk themselves into it at the seminar and they talk themselves right back out of it on the way home. And they think of all the reasons why it's not possible. You know, there's a disease that plagues America. It's called excusitis. It's the inflammation of the excuse-making gland. Which is invariably fatal to success. Now, here's the worst thing. Not only do they talk themselves out of it and don't do it, but someone else says, you know, I'm going to do that. I'm going to lose that weight and save that money and start that business and so on. So, no, it won't work. It won't work. What do you mean it won't work? Well, I thought about it doing once, too. Did you ever do anything about it? No, I didn't, but I knew it wouldn't work. And so they take great delight in talking other people out of it. That's why it's so important to associate and affiliate with the people who are here. One of the things I learned from Jim Rohn many years ago is get around the right people. Get around the right people. If you want to know where the right people are, turn to the left, turn to the right, right? These are the right people. People you associate with, as Chris was saying, your relationships will determine the quality of your life more than any other single factor. So, I have some good news for you. Everybody here is going to double their income. I have it on good statistical evidence. Everybody here is going to double their income. Yes, yes. If you live long enough. The average person's income goes up in America about 3 to 4% a year. So if you work for another 18 to 22 years, 3 to 4% a year, compound interest, you'll double your income. Is this what you had in mind? Say no. No. When do we want to do it? Now. All right. Now, I have to show you something. This is a chart. I hired a consultant to come in and work for me some years ago when Dale and I were working together, and he was going to study every part of my business. At the end of it, he left me with a lousy T-shirt and this graph and a bill for several $1,000s. But I think the graph was worth it because the graph is a picture that once you have it, you could apply it not only to your life but to different aspects of your life. And I'll show you what this graph is. This is the graph of income. So let's just say, imagine that this is the amount of income that you make in the course of your life, and this is where you start, and this is time. These are the years of your life. And this is where you end up at the end of your life. Now, there's all kinds of different incomes. Here's what we have discovered, by the way, is that each person decides where they're going to be on the income graph. By the things that we do and by the things that we fail to do, and often the things that we fail to do have a worse effect on our life than the things that we do, but by the things we do or fail to do, the choices and decisions we make or don't make determine how much we earn. People say, no, my income is determined by my industry. No, because there's people in your industry making 10 times as much as you. There's people in your industry making half as much as you. So we decide where we will be in the long run. Now, we don't decide it overnight, but we decide where we'll be in the long run. So what we find is that everybody starts off earning something, okay? You start off with your first job, and then most people's financial life is very much like the weather. It's unpredictable. It's sort of like a bad week on the NASDAQ. Their financial life is like this. It goes up and down, and sometimes they're in the money, sometimes they're out. Sometimes they're broke, sometimes they're unemployed, sometimes they're employed, making bonuses and so on. This is their financial life. Sometimes they're the windshield, sometimes they're the bug. And isn't that a true statement? And at the end of a person's life, as a result of experience plus luck, this is where most people end up. Fully 50% of baby boomers, according to the recent study, do not have a penny put aside for retirement, and they're pushing 55. They don't have a penny put aside. You all know the statistics, and these people are living on experience and luck. Well, this works out to be an average of about a 3% increase over the course of your lifetime. You know what the word job stands for. J-O-B says just over broke, okay? Nobody ever makes any money at a job. Nobody ever gets ahead. All you do is you keep your nose just above the waterline. That's all you do, and you hope that there's no storms. Because if there's a storm, suddenly, okay. Well, so this is the way most people live their lives. Now, it's very much, we say that most people's financial lives are like backing up in a car at night and hitting something, and you get out to see what it is, and it's a new job, or it's a new marriage, or a new relationship, or a new investment, or something else, all right? Now you're driving along. Now imagine this. Imagine that this is like a back road in the farm country. You're driving along these rutted out, beat to heck back roads in the country, and you have no road map and you have no road signs. So you're lost most of the time financially. This is the story of most people. So they're lost and they have no road maps and no road signs, and it's a terrible road. Well, even if you're driving a brand new Mercedes-Benz, an absolutely beautiful car, engineered perfectly in every way, which is what your mind is. Your mind is the most incredible device for success, achievement, happiness, and long life in the whole world. You're driving with this incredible mind. You're driving a Mercedes-Benz. Even if you're sincere and hardworking and determined and honest and all of those good things, if you're lost on the back road with no road signs and no road maps, you'll never make any progress. Are you with me so far? Please stay with the analogy. Now, let's say you're driving along and you've been working for 10, 20, 30 years, and there are people who have been working 10, 20, 30 years, and they still don't have a pot to you-know-what in or a window to throw it out of. We're living in the most affluent country in the history of man on earth. People from 194 countries dream of coming here. We're living here surrounded by affluence that is unimaginable, and most people worry about money all the time. Now, we did a little bit of background research on you before you came here. We did some checking on you, and we found, this will come as a shock to you, there are people in this very room who worry about money all the time. Yes, and we know who you are. We are watching you. All right. So you're driving along, and your navigator says, honey, you know, this kind of living is lousy. I'm tired of worrying about there being too much month at the end of the money and so on. And, you know, as we're driving along here, lost in these backwoods, I see this freeway over here. There's a freeway over there. I see cars just whipping along that freeway. Every so often I see them through the trees, or I get a glimpse of those cars just whipping along. If we could get onto that freeway, we could really make a lot of progress. So how do we get onto the freeway? Well, let's find a way, and you work your way across country, and you finally find the way onto the freeway. Now, that's what this weekend is. This is the freeway. My talk is part of the freeway process, and to get onto the freeway. Now you get onto the freeway, you put your pedal to the metal, and suddenly you are making incredible progress. You are moving along, and this is the result of knowledge plus skill. That's the difference. Is once you get onto the freeway of life, you start to go faster and faster and make more and more progress. I have spent a lot of time in Germany. In Germany, they have the Autobahns, and you're familiar with the Autobahns. The Autobahns have no speed limit. As a matter of fact, the Autobahns, it is illegal for you to stay on the inside lane. If somebody comes up behind you and you stay in the inside lane and do not let them through, you'll be ticketed and punished, and they fine you enormous amounts. In other words, nobody can stop anybody from going as fast as they want. You want to drive 200 miles an hour, nobody's allowed to stay in front of you. It would be good regulation here, wouldn't it? Is nobody's allowed to be in the center line if somebody's coming up behind them. Anyway, in there they don't have accidents, by the way. They have disasters. If a car crashes, they don't send a tow truck, they send a scraper. You know, they just scrape up the pieces and the parts. Anyway, but imagine you're on the Autobahn of life, and you can go faster and faster and faster, straighter and straighter, faster and faster. Now, this is what happens with knowledge and skill. You see, once you get the knowledge, you can use it over and over again. but you've got to get it first. Once you get it, you can use it over and over again, and as you use it, you get better and better at it. As you get better and better at it, you get more and more results in less time with less investment of time and money. Are you with me so far? That is why people who start to make a little bit of money, then make a little bit more, then make a little bit more, then make a little bit more, they go faster and faster and faster because they get better and better and better at using the skill of making money. And all business skills are learnable. All money-making skills are learnable. So anyway, you're driving along, you whip along here. Now, here's my pretty critical point, is the people who are on the freeway of life are not smarter or better than people who are on the back roads. As a matter of fact, there are many people who are on the freeway of life. A person, to use an example, a person driving a rusted out jalopy, belching smoke, wheels falling off, terrible mechanical condition, will make more progress on the freeway than a genius driving a Mercedes-Benz on the back roads. Are you with me so far? There's nothing that will make you madder than to meet somebody who's dumber than you, making more money than you. Have you had that experience? Yes. And you look at this person, the person is an idiot. They can't find their bum with both hands, you know, and they're making more money than you. And why? It's because they have gotten off the back roads and onto the Autobahn. And that's why people want to come here from all over the world. You know, we talk about the American dream. The American dream. The American dream. Do you know something? There's no other country that has the word dream after its name. There's no Japanese dream, Chinese dream, German dream, Lebanese dream. There's no Nigerian dream or British dream. There's only one country in the world that has the American dream. And it's when Chris was talking about, yeah. And so I've given this a lot of thought, and I can come to the conclusion that the American dream is basically two things. Many other things too. It's two things. First of all, it's freedom. Like Braveheart, remember Braveheart? Freedom! We love to be free. So you get onto the high road of life and you go faster and faster and faster. Now our job is to get onto the high road, and the key to getting onto the high road is knowledge and skill. Now here's the difference, and this I don't know if you can pick this up, but this is the amount of money that you'll earn through the course of your life. It becomes more and more and more and more, and this is the amount that you'll end up with at the end of your lifetime. And this is controlled. Being on the back roads, the farm roads of life, are random, but being on the high road of life is controlled. And your job and my job is to get our finances under control, to get going straight ahead, to make every effort count, to make more and more money, and to end up financially independent. So the American dream is two things, freedom and financial independence. We want to have enough money so we can order from the menu without looking at the right-hand column to see how hungry we are. We want to have enough money so we never have to worry about money again. Is that a good goal? Say yes. Now remember, everybody starts off behind the 8 ball. The very few people that start off with money usually lose it fairly quickly. They blow it, they burn it up, and so on. But people who've had to earn it the hard way can keep it. So our job is to get there. Now, I have to ask you another question. Who's the most important person in this room? Well, do you know something? You're right. You are the most important person in this room. You are really, really important. You are so important it is unbelievable. To yourself, you're the most important person in the whole universe. There's a definition in the dictionary called a solipsist who practices solipsism. And a solipsist is a person who believes that they are the center of the known universe. And solipsism believes that everything in the universe revolves around them. Most of these people get into politics or show business. But we, to a greater or lesser degree, the word comes from the Greek, is we are all solipsists. We all see the world from ourselves. So in terms of your own self, you are the most important person in this room and the most important person in the world. But in terms of your family, you're very important. In terms of your parents, from the time you were a child, your friends, your customers, your coworkers, the things that you do make you a terribly, terribly important person. And the reason that I emphasize this is because how important you feel you are is the critical determinant of how much success you'll have in life. How important you feel you are, how much you like yourself and respect yourself, is the critical determinant of everything that happens to you. You know, and Dennis has taught this, and Jim has taught this, and I've taught this. For me, it's one of the great revelations is your level of self-esteem, how much you like and respect yourself, determines the entire quality of your life. That everything we do in life is either to raise our self-esteem or to protect it. And so the more you like yourself, the more you value yourself and see yourself as an important person, the more you like other people. And the more you like others, the more they like you, and they want to be around you and associated with you and buy from you and recommend you to their friends. There's another thing, is that self-esteem is very closely correlated with self-confidence. Is the more you like yourself, the more confidence you have. The more you like yourself, the more you bounce back from rejection and failure and disappointment. Now, everybody in life is going to get knocked down 1,000 times. The only question is how many times you get back up. And the more you like yourself, the more you realize that failure is never final, as Dennis says, is that failure is merely a form of feedback, is that problems are simply learning experiences. So what you do is, if you really like yourself, you say, "Ooh, that hurt, ouch." Get back into it. And so the more you like yourself, the better you perform at everything you do. So I want you to say the words, because the things that you say to yourself have an inordinate power on your emotions. Say, "I like myself." No, let's take our thumbs out of our mouths. Let's try one more time, all right? Say, "I like myself." I like myself. Wonderful. Now, from now on, as you go through the day, say, "I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself." Do you know that every single language where I've taught this, in every single language, you can't say it without smiling to yourself? It is almost like taking a mental vitamin pill. You take it and you like yourself. As a matter of fact, there's an interesting thing. Our greatest, and Chris was talking about this, and other people talk about it, our greatest obstacles to success are our fears. Fears of failure, fears of loss, fears of making a mistake, and so on. But the more you like yourself, the less you fear. If the higher your self-esteem, the lower your level of fears. And so whenever you're feeling a little nervous or uncomfortable, or you're making a presentation, say, "I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself." Get yourself pumped up. "I like myself, I like myself." Go into a mirror, and I don't advise you to doing this in public washrooms or elevators, but as you walk along, say, "I like myself, I like myself, I like myself." And what you do is you pump up your psyche. You pump up your self-esteem. "I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like." Now, there are mornings when you get up and you will not say, "Good morning, God." You'll say, "Good God, it's morning." And so what you say is, "Oh, boy, I feel terrible, but I like myself. I like myself, I like myself, I like myself." And you get yourself pumped. And the wonderful thing is, do you know what the key to human relations is? The key to human relations is to make other people feel important. Dale Carnegie's breakthrough book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, says make others feel important. And how do you make others feel important? You build their self-esteem. You give them praise and appreciation and compliment. You thank them. You say kind things to them. Zig Ziglar once said this wonderful line. He said, "You can never be too fair or too kind to other people. Never be too fair or too kind. When in doubt, always be even fairer, always be kinder." And why? Because when you're kind to people and generous to people and warm and complimentary, you build their self-esteem. And here's this wonderful thing in psychology, is everything you do that builds the self-esteem of another builds your own. Everything that you do that makes another person feel happier about themselves make you feel happier about yourself. So you find that really successful people, everywhere they go, people just brighten up and smile because they're friendly, they're warm, they're courteous. I have met, and Chris talks about this, I have met and worked with many of the great billionaires, and most of them self-made billionaires in the United States. And I find that every single case, when you meet with these people, and sometimes I spent several hours with them talking about their business alone in a room with the telephones off, and I found that in every case, and I think of these people, they shine in my mind, they're all warm, friendly, kind. If you didn't know that these people were some of the richest people in the world, if you didn't know in advance, there's no way you could tell from meeting them because they're just such nice people. And so now which comes first, being a really genuinely nice person and being a great success, or being a great success and then becoming a nice person? By the way, there's a rule that says this: the success does not change you, it just makes you more of what you already are. So if you're a really nice person, you become successful, be a nicer person. If you're a jerk and you become successful, you become a bigger jerk. You know, you go to Hollywood, right? Okay. Anyway, so the fact is that you are the most important person here. And whenever you feel yourself a little bit down, just say, "Hey, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself." You take control of your mental life by putting your hands on the wheel and say, "Wait, I like myself." Failure is only feedback. Learn from every experience. Get up, get going, and so on. Okay, is this important? You get this? Okay. Now, next question. How many people here are self-employed? Well, Dale, what's the true answer to that question? We all are. We all are. The worst mistake you could ever make in your whole life is to ever think you work for anyone else but yourself. As a matter of fact, your job is not only to be self-employed, but to be unemployable. Right? Where you just simply can't work for anybody else. You can only work for yourself. And it's interesting, it's the attitude. Chris was talking about attitude. It's the attitude of self-employment that separates the winners from the non-winners. It's top people, and according to the studies, the top 3% of adults see themselves as self-employed, even if they work for another company, even if someone else signs their paycheck all their lives. They see themselves as self-employed. They see themselves as in charge of their own life. And I have thought about this over and over again, and one of the great turning points in my life was this, is when I realized that I was responsible for everything that happened to me. I was in charge. I was self-employed. And the acceptance of total responsibility is one of the great scary thoughts, but one of the great liberating thoughts of life. And so I found that really high performers, all leaders, all men and women of great accomplishment, men and women of strength and character, men and women who accomplish great things, are people who are highly self-responsible. It is the key to success, and I'll come back to this a little bit later. So here are the words that you use. The words are, I am responsible. Say it. I am responsible. Oh, no. Try it again. I am responsible. I like myself. And I'm responsible. Those are the keys to success. As long as you hold on to those, whenever you have a problem or difficulty of any kind, you'll go back to that. I like myself and I'm responsible. If there's something in my life that's not working, then by gum, it's up to me to change it. I'm not going to sit here and moan and cry and weep and moan and blame other people. I just get busy and do something about it. All successful people are take-charge people. And these are really, really important in terms of becoming a millionaire. Can you imagine a milquetoast millionaire? A person who does not accept responsibility with low self-esteem? No. You've got to have a person who really likes themselves and who really feels in charge of their own life. One last question. What is the most important part of this weekend? You're right. It's what you do afterwards. It's not what we learn. It's not the pleasure that we have. It's not the interaction. It's what you do afterwards. Now, I've learned a very interesting point, and this has been borne out in 50 years of study. The one most identifiable quality of successful people is that they're intensely action-oriented, is they're moving fast. They're in action. They hear a good idea. They move quickly. They don't sit there and think about it. When you sit there and think about it, what happens is the energy goes away. So you'll find that the most important part of today is what you do afterwards and how fast you do it. Now let me ask you a question. If you take action on any item, any idea, only two things can happen. What are they? You succeed or you fail. Okay? It works or it doesn't work. If it works, what do? You do more of it. If it doesn't work, what do? You learn from it quickly, get smarter, and try something else. But you cannot lose from taking action. You can only lose from not taking action. And when I spoke many years ago to one of the richest men in the world, he's now worth about $5.4 billion, and at that time he was just building his company. His company was just growing. He said, you know, they have found in their company that people who hear a new idea and take action quickly will succeed. He said, but people who hear a new idea and don't take action immediately will probably not take action on that idea at all and won't take action on anything else either. The one thing they've identified in successful people is that they're all intensely action-oriented. So always think in terms of what action do I take? What do I do now? Somebody comes to you with a problem. They say, I've got this problem. Wham. I say, good. What are you going to do about it? What's your next step? What's your next action step? How are you going to solve the problem? In other words, keep helping people think in terms of the actions that they're going to take to achieve their goals or resolve their problems. And you lead by example. As Albert Schweitzer said many years ago, he said, you must teach men at the school of example, for they will learn at no other. So the most important thing that you do for your friends and for your family is be an action-oriented person. Be a high self-esteem, high responsibility, action-oriented person. Those are the three qualities for financial success. Probably the three qualities for all kinds of success. Does it make sense so far? Yes. Say yes. Okay. Now, let me just go back quickly to my own story. I did not have an auspicious beginning. I grew up in a family that had no money. Our favorite theme song in our family was, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. In every tune and bar, is anybody growing up in a family, that was your theme song, we can't afford it? And I'm still now, and even at my age, I still go and I look at the time and I'm like, geez, we can't afford it. What do you mean you can't afford it? It's a newspaper, for Christ's sake. Maybe I'll read somebody else's, you know? I mean, that costs 50 cents. Anyway. My friend Susie Orman said this. She said, one of the most important things in becoming wealthy is to deal with your goblins with regard to money. Almost all of us have goblins with regard to money. Fears, emotions, go back into our early childhood, the way our parents responded to money, what happened with money, did we not have very much, did we lose it, were our parents hurt financially? So we grow up with these fears with regard to money, and in order to become financially independent, you have to get over those fears. You have to first of all identify what they are. What is the number one fear with regard to money? Yeah, fear of poverty. We're afraid of being poor. We're afraid of not having any money. We're afraid of being destitute or dependent upon someone else. Now, it's not likely to happen, but nonetheless, that fear, which is an irrational fear, often holds us back from taking chances. And it's just something you have to identify. And I learned many years ago that if you have the fear of poverty, you say, all right, what's the flip side of the fear of poverty? What's the virtue of the fear of poverty? What's the good part of being afraid of not having money? What's the good part? Yeah, you work harder to get more money. You work harder and you're smarter in holding on to the money. You build up a financial estate. So starting off poor, as I said before, can often be a very good thing because it makes you very smart about making money and holding on to it. So in other words, when you talk about money like that, you bring it to the surface of your mind and you become free from the fears that are involved. That's no extra charge for that, just to throw in. Okay, so I started off with no money. I did not graduate from high school. I finished in the half of the class that makes the top half possible. They say that everybody serves some purpose, even if it's to be a bad example, and I was the bad example. The teachers would point to me and say, if you don't smarten up, you'll end up like him. And that would scare people, like the boogeyman under the bed. I mean, scare kids into doing their assignments. I had a chance to go to several schools when I was growing up because I kept getting thrown out of them. Suspended, expelled, rejected, suspended, expelled, rejected, and finally I left school and I got a job, a laboring job. I was told, by the way, that if you don't get a good education and get good grades, you won't do well in school. If you don't get good grades and do well in school, you won't get a good job, you won't go to college, you won't have a good life. So I've been told this all my life. You know, they tell you that, to tell kids that to scare them. So you grow up and they say, I didn't get very good grades in school. And by the way, remember I told you about the research that we did on you? Yes, we found some other interesting things. We found there are people in this very room who did not get good grades in school. Yes, and we know who you are. We were amazed at how many of you there are. It was astonishing. Anyway, and here's what I learned later in life. It took me about 10, 15 years to learn this, is there's no relationship between grades in school and success in life, unless you believe there is. If you believe that because you got poor grades you can't be successful, that becomes your truth. As William James of Harvard said, belief creates the actual fact. If you believe it, it becomes true for you. But there's no relationship at all. There's no relationship between anything that happened in your past and your present moment. You can decide at this moment that that was then, this is now. And you can go in a different direction. And your grades have no relevance. Forbes does the Forbes 400 every single year, and they do brief biographies of people in the Forbes 400. They found that people who dropped out of high school, if they make it to the Forbes 400, the 400 richest men and women in America, they will be worth, on average, $300 million more than people who graduated from college if they dropped out of high school and they made it. And they said, why is that? Well, they started earlier and they started harder. And they got much smarter, much faster. They had a big leap on people who are still going to college, drinking, and so on. They're already there starting their third or fourth or fifth business because they dropped out of high school. So if you got lousy grades in school, you should say, thank God I got lousy grades in school. Because that's the key to your success. All right, so anyway, my first job was a laboring job. I was washing dishes. I washed dishes, and then finally when I lost that job, I got a job washing cars with a car wash, and when I lost that job, I got a job washing floors with a janitorial service. I thought washing was in my future. My wife is very kind about that. She keeps giving me things to wash, dishes, children's bottoms, things like that. And lost when you're young is a euphemism for non-voluntary career redeployment. This is where you get a chance to explore new careers unexpectedly. Today they have severance programs to the end of the month. The severance program was to the end of the day, or sometimes the end of the hour. They used to fire you at either 5 to 12 or 5 to 5. I know because I had experiences of both. And they come up to you looking like you'd been sentenced to death and they were the executioner, and they say, we won't need your services anymore, here's your final pay, there's the door. So I'd go from place to place, and I'd say, I'm looking for a job, and they say, well, we don't need much help right now. I say, well, I'm the right person for you, because I won't be much help. And that wasn't helping me much, and I went from place to place, desperate, lined up for employment, did day labor, worked as a gardener, I dug ditches, I worked as a construction laborer, carrying heavy things from place to place. I worked in sawmills stacking lumber, I worked in the brush with a chainsaw. One summer I dug wells. Now, digging wells is like a metaphor for government service. That's where you start at ground level and you work down rather than up. And when you succeed, you fail, because when you find water, they fire you. Well, what's that? Looks like water. Well, cover it up. We need 2 more days' work here. Well diggers are not highly motivated, because if they find water, they put themselves out of work. It's like in the government, you're allowed to tinker with problems endlessly, but never solve one. Because if you solve a problem, then you put otherwise unemployable people out of work. So I would go from place to place. I worked on farms and ranches. When I was 23 years old, I was an itinerant farm laborer. I was sleeping on the hay in the farmer's barn. I was arising before dawn each morning and working all day to get the harvest in before the first frost. I ate with the farmer's family in the kitchen of the farmhouse. I was uneducated, I was unskilled, and at the end of the harvest, I was once more unemployed. And when I could no longer get a laboring job, how many people here are in sales? Well, that's what I got into, too, when I couldn't get a laboring job, so I know where you're coming from. Yeah. And so I got into selling, and I was not afraid to work. Did you notice that selling is clean work? It's not digging ditches. It's not farm labor. It's clean work. So they gave me the 3-part sales training program, which is pretty much what we get in life. Here's your cards. Here's your brochures. There's the door. After 1 month, they give you the first motivational program, which is hang in there. After 2 months, they give you the real motivational program, is they sit you down and they look at you quite grimly and they say, look, if you don't sell something, pretty soon we'll have to fire you. They're not even paying you anything. You're working on straight commission, cold calling, and they're going to fire you. You don't even have a desk. Now, that sometimes makes you so mad you go out and sell something just to spite them. All right? Well, I was hanging on by my fingernails. After about 6 months, it's a really important point for me. After about 6 months of hanging on by my fingernails, when I made a sale, I had to have the commission immediately because I had to get back to my boarding house. I was paying a couple of dollars a night for a room in a boarding house, and I had an ex-Gestapo landlady. Her motto was no pay, no stay, no credit, nothing. So finally, there's this one guy in our company. He's making 5 or 10 times as much as anybody else. He's got a pocket full of $20 bills that would choke a horse. I get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out there in the parking lot at 7 o'clock when people come to work. I'm working all day. I take a brief lunch, dinner between 5 and 6, and I go and knock on doors and apartment doors in the neighborhoods after dinner until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. If the light was on, I'd knock on the door. I even woke people up in their pajamas to try to sell to them. Not a good start for a sales conversation. And this guy would roll in around 9 o'clock. Prospect would come in around 9:15. They'd sit down, have a nice little chat, cup of coffee. He'd talk to him a little bit, write some on paper, and pull out his check and write a check. And he'd go out in the morning and make a couple of sales, come back, have lunch with a customer, make another sale, make a couple of... I was making 1 sale a week. This guy was selling with both hands like a faro dealer in Reno. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I finally, and everybody looked at him, and great, So finally I went to him and I said, tell me, what are you doing differently from me? How come you make so many sales? And he said, well, show me your presentation. I'll critique it for you. I said, you show me yours and I'll show you mine. I said, by the way, how do you define a sales presentation? He said, well, a sales presentation is a logical and orderly process where, first of all, you separate prospects from suspects. You then establish rapport with them. You don't try to make friends with people who have no money, I mean, obviously, or not qualified. You then identify their needs by asking them questions. You show that our product or service is the very best, all things considered, to satisfy their needs. You answer their questions or objections. You get them to take action, and then you get resales and referrals from the same people, which loops you back into prospecting. I couldn't believe it. I was writing this all the time. There's a logical process to it. I couldn't believe there was a logical process to it. I was using the blah, blah cell. Blah, 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 blah. I was hoping people would stop me and buy, and nobody was. So I wrote it all down. I said, well, don't you say this? He said, no, you don't say this. You ask questions. And so I realized that telling is not selling. Asking questions is selling. So I went out and I began to ask questions, and I would go through a logical process and make sure it was a prospect before I began talking, and then take some time to get to know them a little bit better so that we had a feeling of rapport and so on, and then identified their needs, and my sales started to inch up. And then I said, well, what else can I do? He said, have you read any books on selling? I said, are there books on selling? Well, there's thousands of books on selling. They've been written by some of the best salespeople in the history of the world. So I went out and began reading 1 to 2 hours every single morning. I'd get up at 5 o'clock and read 2 hours every morning and take notes and write them on 3x5 cards and carry them around with me. And I learned what to say and how to answer objections, how to get appointments, and how to work on the telephone. And my sales began to go up. And then I began to listen to audio programs. I still remember my first audio programs on sales. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Here's somebody who worked for 30 years, trained 20,000 salespeople, was able to make sales, go into a city, a town with 350 homes and make 346 sales, cold calling, knocking on doors. And just he explained, this is the psychology of selling. And then I began to go to courses like this. And every single time I took the information, I took action on it immediately. Now, this is so important. You know, many are called, but few are chosen. You've heard that thing. Many people hear these things, but they don't do anything about it. If it was just information that enabled a person to be successful, all librarians would be rich. Because they're surrounded with information, but they don't act on the information. So what I did is I try it out. And then sometimes it didn't work. And by the way, here's something that changed my life. I found that if you try something new for the first time, it doesn't work. Most things don't work anyway. My friend Charlie Jones would tell you that nothing works. But most things don't work the first time you try them out. Peter Drucker says this: most business ideas fail at least the first few times. But what you have to do is try it and try it again and try it again. So I would learn a way to answer an objection or to get an appointment or something else that wouldn't work. I tried again, it wouldn't work. I finally made a decision which changed my life, and I pass it on to you. I would try something 10 times before I pass judgment on it. If it was a good idea, I'd give it 10 tries before I pass judgment. I wouldn't try it once and quit, because that's what everybody else does. Either that or they don't try it at all. So I try it 10 times, and I'd rush out. I learned something new in the morning, I'd rush out, and I'd say, I'm going to talk to 10 people today, and I'm going to try it on all 10. And this is what I found. If it's a good idea, about the 5th or 6th or 7th time, it'll start to work. And then you own it. It becomes an arrow in your quiver. It's a piece of knowledge, it's a piece of skill that you have at the skin level, and you have it for the rest of your career. So I began to practice, and my sales went up and up and up until they made me a sales mangler. They said, you know, whatever you're smoking, find some other people and share it with them because it's working. And so I began recruiting people. I ran ads in the paper and I recruited people and I took them in and I taught them to sell and they went out. And today, all over the world, I meet millionaires and multimillionaires, people who run industries, run multiple industries, who I literally started on the street with no money, stone broke. One of my best guys was in jail. I had to bail him out of jail, get a lawyer, get him off the charges, pay his fine, dress him, and teach him how to sell. Today he's worth about $25 million. I had breakfast with him last year, and we were talking. I called him up. He lives a long way away. Called him up. We had breakfast, and I said, I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. He's a major power in his community, owns multiple businesses. He's very high up in several of the major organizations. He said, I said, you've done so much with your life. It's phenomenal. He said, yeah. And he looks like this. He said, and I still remember where I started. He said, it was in that jail that you bailed me out of all those years ago. It's not in his bio, by the way. It's not mentioned there. Anyway, so what I found was that you can learn anything you need to learn to achieve any goal that you want for yourself. Now, here's an important point. And for instance, if I asked Dale said to me, Brian, would you give me a call later on this week? And I said, sure, I'll give you a call later on this week. And I'll walk away. Well, what would Dale say? Well, don't you want my phone number? I say, no. What, you live in Phoenix? Phoenix is pretty good. This is simple. Just certain numbers. I'll just punch the buttons till I get through. Punch. Dale, is that you? No? Again, punch. Dale, is that you? No, punch. It's only 7 digits plus an area code. Hey, what could be harder than that, huh? Is that you? Now, how long would it take me to get through to Dale if I just punched the buttons at random? Never would. It's hundreds of thousands of millions of words. You know how many Social Security numbers we have made up of what? 4, 2, 3, 9 digits? Here's 10 digits. In other words, hundreds of millions. I would never get through to Dale. But what if Dale gave me his number and it was 235 1234 and I wrote it down. I got the area code. I could dial Dale from anywhere in the world. And if he was there, I'd get through. And I could give Dale's number. It's Gail. Karen, I'm sure, give it to Karen. Karen could call. I'll give it to you. You could call. If you had the right number, you could get through. Isn't that true? In other words, if you have the number in the right sequence, you can dial from anywhere and you'll get through. But now what if they'll give you the number and it's the last 4 digits are 1, 2, 3, 4, and I wrote them down 1, 3, 2, 4. I got 1 digit out of place. Now that's not very much. You know, 1 crummy digit. I mean, we're talking about, what, 10 numbers here and 1 digit. I shouldn't be penalized for that, should I? But if I tried to get through to Dale with the wrong digits in the wrong order, would I get through? What if I was sincere and hardworking and I set goals and I came to Jim Rohn's seminars and I read books and listened to tapes and I loved the Lord and paid my taxes and was a good family person, but I wasn't dialing the numbers in the right sequence? Would I ever get through? No. This is why people fail, is they may know the right numbers, but they don't have them in the right sequence. Here's an interesting question. If you went to the university, for example, to get a degree in engineering, could you take any courses you wanted? Could you say, well, I'll take a few of these courses after 4 years. Well, I'll take a whole bunch of courses. I like my degree now. They'd laugh in your face, wouldn't they? If you go to get a degree in any subject, what do you have to do? You have to take certain courses in order, in sequence, some before and some after. Some are prerequisites and so on. You have to take the courses in sequence. And only when you've passed all the required courses in sequence do you get your degree. But you get your degree automatically if you've done the courses. That's the key to success. If you want to be successful in real estate or in building your own business, most people run their own business like broken teeth. In other words, they know a little bit about this and a little bit about that and a bit about this, and they can make a couple of sales and negotiate some purchases and so on and so forth. And 86% of business owners in America make less than they would earn if they were working for wages with someone else. Why? It's because they have not learned the entire sequence of building and operating a business. And yet you look at the Fortune 500 companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies, almost everyone started on a kitchen table. You find that one way or another they've learned all the necessary steps, and they do them in the proper sequence. And if you start to do things in the proper sequence, you get through every single time. Are you with me so far? This is really important. It's the difference between success and failure. Anyway, so imagine you went to the dentist and the dentist decided to drill before putting in the anesthesia. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, anesthesia, you know, early in the drilling, later in the drilling. Would this be a good dentist? No, there's a sequence, for Christ's sakes. Well, how about they drill before they do any x-rays? Let's drill before we do any x-rays. So who knows what tooth needs it? Let's drill them all, you know. That's what people do in selling. They just call them all. What the heck? Who knows if... Anyway, I'm not going to get there. So what I learned is that there's a proper order and sequence. And what I learned was this, and it changed my life. What I learned was the law of cause and effect. Now, the law of cause and effect is called the granddaddy law. It's the iron law of the universe. It says that for every effect in your life, there's a cause. That everything happens for a reason. It says that success is not an accident. Failure is not an accident. Everything happens for a reason. And if you can be clear about the effect that you want, which is why Jim and Dennis talk so much about goals, and I will later, is if you can be clear about the effect that you want, you can trace it back to someone who at one time did not have that effect, and then find out what they did, and do the same thing over and over again until you get the same result. As my friend Nito says, success leaves tracks. If you want to follow a person in the snow, you put your feet in their tracks. If you want to find a successful person, if you want to become wealthy, success leaves tracks. Follow the tracks. You got most people who want to become wealthy are trying to make their own trail. You know, don't go where every other person's gone. Go to where no one has gone and blaze a new trail. Yeah. You know what they call a pioneer? A pioneer is someone lying face down in the dirt with their back full of arrows. You know, that's not your goal. If you want to be successful, what you do is you find out hundreds of thousands of millions of people who started from nothing and become wealthy, and you do the same thing. Only after you reach the end of their trail do you begin to make your own trail. But you don't start making your own trail at the beginning. So you do what they do over and over again, and here's what I learned. Nobody's smarter than you, and nobody's better than you. Nobody's smarter than you, nobody's better. People who are on the fast track are not better than you, they're not smarter than you, some are dumber than you, some have fewer talents, fewer abilities, less intelligence, less opportunities, but they're doing the cause and effect relationships. They're learning from other people. I've spoken to many people who have come over to this country from other countries. I'll give you a great story. I could tell you so many stories. I was doing a talk in Los Angeles. We were doing an infomercial that was being videotaped. They had a studio audience. And during the break, one of the gentlemen in the studio audience stood up and said, I'd like to explain why I'm here to be in this audience while Brian Tracy is making this film. And he was from Pakistan. And he was beautifully dressed. And he stood up. He said, I am from Pakistan. He spoke very well. He said, I came over to the United States 3 years ago. He said, my uncle and my brother had signed my paper, so he was legal. So he said, I came over here to work with them in their company, and by the time I got everything cleared and I'd gone to university and cleared up and come here, their company had gone broke, and they both moved away in different directions. When I arrived in Los Angeles, they were gone. I knew nobody, and I was penniless. He said, I didn't know what to do. He said, I had no idea how to succeed in America. He said, and I was walking along, and one day I walked past the University of Southern California, UCLA, and I had gone to university in Karachi, and I knew a little bit about university, so I sort of drifted onto the campus. I didn't even have a place to stay. He was essentially homeless. He was carrying all of his stuff in a bag. He said, and he went to the dining room where they line up at the cafeteria and they leave their food, and he would sit down next to somebody, and when they were finished, he'd slip over and he'd eat what they hadn't eaten, and this was a good way to get food, and he started to sleep in the bushes on the UCLA campus. In the daytime, he would bundle up his stuff. He'd wash in the bathrooms. He'd hang around the university. He looked like a homeless person, dirty, unkempt, ragged, lousy clothes, typical student. He said nobody didn't even stand out. After he'd been doing this for 2 or 3 weeks, he'd been hanging around the campus, and he was just in despair. He finally went to the counselor, and he said, I need some advice. The counselor said, what's your student number? He said, well, I don't have a student number. The counselor said, well, I can't give you. He told all this story. I was fascinated. He said, I can't give you advice or counseling because I have to log in the people that I work with. He said, well, what is the problem? He said, well, I came from Pakistan. He told him the story. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, well, the only thing I can do for you is I will give you this set of Brian Tracy audio programs to listen to. It's a true story. He said, but you can't take them away. I'll give you a tape player. You can sit in this room over here, and you can listen to them and take notes. So he didn't have a lot going, if you know. So he said, okay, I'll do that. To him, it was completely bizarre, listening to a bunch of audio cassettes in a cubicle. So he took them over and he sat them down. He got notes from the wastebaskets, and he began making notes. He came back every day for a week. He listened to the programs hour after hour and wrote notes on how to succeed in America. He said, went back at the end of the week, he gave it back to me, he said, thank you. He said, now I understand how you succeed in this country. He walked out, he said, that was 2.5 years ago. He walked in, he said, I drove my new Mercedes to this filming. He said, I own 2 companies that were worth $2.5 million. He was wearing a Giorgio Armani suit. He had a Rolex watch. It's beautifully turned out. He said, I have a beautiful home. He said, I have 2 businesses. I'm just starting a 3rd. He said, now I know how it works. And now I can do it over and over again. Now, that is a great story from a person coming from absolutely nothing, and it's a true story, by the way. It's one of those stories that it wasn't true. It should be. Okay. But it's word for word true. Anyway, so the law of cause and effect says that if you do what other successful people do, you get the same results they will. But if you don't do what other successful people do, nothing can help you. So your job and my job, and this changed my whole life. Chris mentioned I had started, built, managed, or turned around 22 businesses. I've also consulted with more than 1,000 businesses of every size, Fortune 500 companies in 23 countries. In every single case, I go in order to work with them, I have to study and figure out how this business works. What are the cause and effect relationships? How is money, income, profit generated in this business? What are the constraints that are holding profit back? And so on. And so I've been able to develop a pretty good intellectual foundation in these companies, but what I found is if you do what other successful people do in an industry, you get the same results. Do you know that in business today, the 80-20 rule applies? Is that 20% of businesses make all the money, and the other 80% are marginal? And they all start off at the same starting line, but 20% make all the money. In our society, 20% of the people make all the money, and the other 80% worry about money all their life. So which would you like to be in, the top 20 or the bottom 80? Top 20. Now make the decision to be in the top 20, then the only question you ask is how do you get there? Well, here is the turning point for me. As I began to study philosophy and metaphysics, what I found is that thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes, and conditions are effects. And when I learned this, I couldn't believe it. Thoughts are causes? You mean my thoughts control the conditions of my life? I want to give you one of the simplest of all mathematical formulations. It's this. 1 equals 1. There's a direct relationship between what you think and what happens to you. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. Your thoughts are causes and your conditions are effects. In other words, you create your own world by the way you think. And the great philosophers, the great metaphysicians, the great mystical teachers and spiritual teachers and all the religions have come to this conclusion, is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. Now, you've heard this over and over again, but it's absolutely astonishing. You become what you think about most of the time. So the question I have to ask you is, what do you think about most of the time? What they found, self-made millionaires think about becoming financially independent most of the time, starting at a very early age. And every single financial decision they make throughout their years is, will this help me to be financially independent or not? And if it won't, then I won't do it. I just put it off for now, and I'm going to make the decision that will lead to financial independence. Thin people think about being thin most of the time. Fit people think about being fit. Loving people think about being loving. Happy people think about being happy. Are you with me so far? Yes, so what do you think about most of the time? By the way, this principle is true, but it's not always true, because if it was always true, every young man would turn into a young woman by the age of 20. And fat people would turn into pizzas, you know, okay. But you do become what you think about most of the time. So what they did at the University of Pennsylvania is they took 350,000 people like yourselves and myself, entrepreneurs, ambitious, people in sales, people who are going somewhere with their life, and they interviewed them over a 6, 12, 18, 24-month period, and they did psychographic and demographic tests on them, and they asked them the question, what do you think about most of the time? What do you think about most of the time? Now, I said before that you are in an elite, that you're in the top 10%. And how do we know that? It's because you're here. Only the top 10% of adults will ever come to a seminar like this in their whole lives. In fact, I've met people 40 and 50 years old who have never been to a seminar or an adult learning experience after they left school. They have never been to one. It's almost like this world of continuous learning and upgrading of skills runs parallel. It's a parallel universe to them. They don't even participate in it. Many people that you told you were coming to this couldn't believe it. They couldn't understand. Why on earth would you go to something like that? You know all that stuff. Whenever somebody says to me, I know all that stuff, I say, geez, you must be rich. Geez, you must be rich. Could I borrow $1 million from you? Because if you know all that stuff, you must be awfully rich. And they look away as they go to catch their bus home. You know. Anyway, so you're in the top 10% because you're here, because you can always tell who a person is by looking at what they do. It's not what they say or wish or hope or attend or declare when they are accepting the nomination at the primary. It's only what they do which is the true test of who they really are. Remember this, there's an awful lot of attempt to fool people by saying, you know, watch my hand, watch my hand. Don't ignore what I do, just watch what I promise to do. No, always just watch what a person does, because what a person does is the true expression of their real values. Only action is action. Anyway, so if the fact that you're here means that you're in the top 10%, not because of thoughts or feelings or wishes or hopes or intentions, but because you're here. You've made the supreme effort and sacrifice to be here. You've made a decision like crossing that line in the Alamo, I'm in the top 10%. Whether you knew it or not doesn't matter. Now you do. You're in the top 10%. The only thing you need to do now is to make it a reality. People say, if you knew how much I was making, you wouldn't say I was in the top 10%. Here's one of the great rules. It doesn't matter where you're coming from in life. All that really matters is where you're going. And you've made the decision to be in the top 10%. Is that true? Say yes. Yes. Good. Okay, it's just a matter of getting there. Now, so they did this study with 350,000 people like you and I. They sliced and diced them by percentiles, the bottom 10%, next 10%, and they took the top 10%. They found people in the top 10% think differently from people in the bottom 80 or 90% in some very profound and life-changing ways. Now, can you imagine how people think and what people think about most of the time in the top 10%? Can you guess? What do people in the top 10% think about most of the time? Well, you're all correct. Every answer is correct. Let me summarize it. They think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. They think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. Unsuccessful people think about what they don't want, what makes them mad and unhappy today and yesterday and when they were children, and who's to blame. Unhappy, unsuccessful people are always talking about what they don't want and who's to blame. Successful people are always talking about what they do want and how to get it. So I'm going to teach you an operative word. This is a word that you're going to use for the rest of your career. This is the word of the high achiever, the self-made millionaire, the truly successful, positive, happy person. The word is how. Say how. From now on, when you ever have a goal, the only question you ask is how. If you have a problem, how do you solve it? Have an obstacle, how do you overcome it? Have a financial goal, how do you achieve it? If you have excess weight, how do you get rid of it? If you want to be healthy, how do you achieve it? The only thing you ask is how. Now, whenever you ask the question how, it forces you to take complete control of your life, to accept responsibility. It raises your self-esteem, gives you a sense of personal power and self-confidence. The word how is almost like a miraculous word, because only action-oriented people ask the word how. Everyone else says, what are you going to do? When's it going to happen? Wah, 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 wah. Ah, shut up. The top people say, how? We've got a problem. How do we solve it? Wait till she gets in here. She'll find a solution. Because they know when you come in, they say, we've got a problem. Good. How do we solve it? What's the problem? What do we do? How do we minimize the damage? How do we solve the problem? Not who's to blame and who did this and who should have done that and everything else. Worry about that later, if at all. For now, let's put the fire out. Right? Top people are people like heads of SWAT teams. They say, oh, those nasty people took that building. What are we going to do? We should pass a law. You know, no. What they do is they say, hit a building, kill them all, let God sort them out. You know. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's old programming. We live in California. We sit under triangles and put crystals in our armpits out here. Okay. Light incense and say Om, Om, and the money will come. Om, Om. Yeah, you're going to get a quarter in this hand, a nickel in that hand, and that's all you're going to. Anyway, so So what they found is people in the top 10% are people who think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. And that's what your job is, to think about what you want and how to get it. When I talked about getting off the low road onto the high road, the turning point in your life, we say, look at all those people on that high road. Those people are doing so well in life. How do we get onto that road as well? The very fastest way is you find somebody who's successful and you go and say, how would I get onto the same road you're on? And here's the most wonderful thing. You're surrounded by some of the most wonderful people in America, and I'll tell you this, every person in this room, if you ask them, what advice would you give me to be more successful, they'll tell you the best they've got. They wouldn't give you their third best idea. If you turn to the person next to you and you said, what's the very best idea for success that you would share with me based on your experience, they'll give you the best idea they could think of. Here's an exercise I did. I want you to think about the answer to this question. If someone were to ask you, a young person, say, what is the most important success principle you ever learned? What's the most important success principle you learned to help you to be successful? What answer would you give? I was working with a large company. We were doing an international seminar, and I just spontaneously said, I'll tell you what, if everybody here will just write down their answer, their one word of advice, and bring them up here and just put them on the stage at the break, we will take those and we'll publish them all, and everybody who gives us an answer will get the answers from everybody else. We did that. The company's sales went up 500% in the next 3 years, because they all had the best success principles for everybody. So if I were to ask you that question, would you have an answer? Yes. All right. Then what I want you to do is I want you to turn to the person to the right and left of you, and I would say, what would be your answer? What would be the best success principle you could think of if I was to ask you one success idea? What idea would it be? Turn to the person next to you and give them your best idea. Go ahead. Coming back. Now this is an important question. This is an important question. For the rest of this conference, when you introduce yourself to each other, go up and say, hi, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so. What's yours? What's your best idea? You have had so much experience, there's enough wisdom in this room to make everybody here rich 2 or 3 times over. Isn't that true? So therefore, one of the best things... All right. One of the kindest and most generous things you can do is to share your ideas with other people. So whenever you get into a conversation, say, what's yours? What's yours? And this will make a wonderful mastermind conversation. Every time you meet with 2 or 3 people, say, what's yours? And share ideas. And write these ideas down. As Jim says, write them down. Don't let them fly away. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the qualities of success. What they found at the University of Pennsylvania is that the #1 quality of success, they did the psychographic and demographic tests on these people, they found the #1 quality that the top 10% of people had was optimism. As Chris was talking earlier, they're optimistic. They have a positive, constructive attitude toward life. Does it mean they don't get beaten down and make mistakes and fall down and get disappointed and so on? Of course they do, but they bounce back. The major test of how healthy you are as a person is not whether you get knocked down, but how quickly you bounce back, how quickly you recover. If you do a stress test in medicine, what they do is they do a stress test to test your system. The critical question is how quickly do you respond? How quickly do you come back to where you were before? So optimism, we find, is the mark of mental fitness, and mental fitness is like physical fitness. You develop mental fitness by doing mental fitness exercises. And I want to give you the 4 critical exercises for optimists. These are the 4 ways that optimists think that separate them from people who are average, who are pessimistic. Remember, the great majority of people are not particularly positive or optimistic, but all leaders are. So #1 is top people think and talk about what they want most of the time. Whenever you find yourself getting upset, say, wait a minute, I'm going to think and talk about what I want. Your conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, either a positive thought or a negative thought. If you discipline yourself to think about what you want and how to get it, you push out all negative thoughts for that moment. If you keep doing something repeatedly over and over again, what do you eventually develop? You develop a habit. You know, Donna talked about success habits. It's so important. If you force yourself to think about what you want and how to get it, eventually you get up in the morning, the first thing you think about is what you want and how to get it. Okay? The second way that you become an optimist is you look for the good in every situation and in every person. You always look for the good. Something goes wrong, look for the good. Your house burns down. Well, that's good. We needed a house closer to work anyway. Your car gets stolen. Well, that's good. The ashtrays were full. You know? You lost your job. Well, that's good. We didn't like the job anyway. So, in other words, look for something good in every situation. Now, here's the most remarkable thing. If you look for something good, you'll always find it. You'll always find something good. You find what you're looking for. If you're looking for the problem or the flaw, then you'll find it. If you're looking for something good, you'll find it. Question. Does anybody here have a light with a dimmer switch on it at home? Say yes. It's required by law to have dimmer switches in your house. Electrical union. Okay. Now, a dimmer switch has a very interesting parallel. With a dimmer switch, it's controlled manually. You either turn it or move it up or down, and when it's on full, it's bright, and when it's down, it's dark. There's a dimmer switch on your brain as well. Only the dimmer switch on your brain is controlled by your thoughts. And when your thoughts are really positive, your dimmer switch is on full. You're positive, you're creative, you're high energy, you feel good about yourself. In other words, you're positive, you're the best person you could possibly be when your dimmer switch is on full. When your dimmer switch is down low, your personality is darkened, you're angry, you're worried, you're fearful, you're negative, you're pessimistic, you're skeptical, you run for public office and talk about how terrible America is. Okay. But the fact is that your dimmer switch is controlled by the thoughts that you think at any given moment. And if you think about what you want and how to get it, your dimmer switch goes on full. And you have all of your energy available to you. When you think and look for the good in a situation, a difficult situation, you say, that's good. What happens is your dimmer switch goes on full. Now, the third thing you do is you look for the valuable lesson in every setback or difficulty. Napoleon Hill, in his 22-year study of 500 of the most successful people America ever produced, found that one of the qualities they had in common was they always looked for the valuable lesson in every setback or difficulty. Quick question. Does anybody here have any problems? Good. Problems are a sign of life and activity. There's only one group of people in our society that has no problems, and they're all in the cemetery. They have no relationship problems, no money problems, no health problems. So if you are having problems, it's a sign of life. All right, so you have problems. Problems I have found in life are like stacks of dinner plates. And they're stacked up, and some are low down in your hierarchy of concern, and some are higher. But there's always one problem on top. Sort of like a law of priority. There's always one problem that causes you more concern or worry than anything else. This is the one that you can think of. Usually it comes with hair on top. Although there are some exceptions in this room. So I want you to take as an exercise, this is very important, by the way, and this is a go-forward exercise for you and your family and other people for the rest of your life. I want you to take the biggest problem you have in life and imagine that this problem has been sent to you containing a lesson. My friend Norman Vincent Peale used to say, when God wants to send you a gift, he wraps it up in a problem. When he wants to send you a big gift, he wraps it up in a big problem. Most people get so preoccupied with the wrapping, they don't look for the gift. The gift is the lesson. And my promise to you is that every problem you'll ever have contains a lesson that is in most cases more valuable than the problem itself. In fact, the lesson may be what you need to learn to become rich and happy. It's almost as if there is a great power in the universe that wants you to be a big success, wants you to be happy and prosperous, but this power knows you can only achieve it if you learn the lessons necessary on the way. So at the exact right time, this power will send you the lesson wrapped up in a problem. Your job of the superior person, is to look into it and say, what am I meant to learn from this problem? What am I meant to learn, and what else am I meant to learn? And what else am I meant to learn? Keep drilling down, because sometimes one big problem contains a whole series of lessons that will profoundly change your life if you can recognize the problems. And as Donna said, by the way, if you don't recognize the solution within the problem, it'll come around again, only this time it'll be more expensive. And if you don't get the lesson then, it'll come around again. This great power will keep sending you the lesson until you get it. And then once you pass that, you go to the next lesson and you have the next problem. So your job is to say, what am I meant to learn from this situation? And my promise to you is you'll always find a lesson, and while you're looking for the lesson, your dimmer switch will be on full. You'll be positive, you'll be optimistic, you'll be forward-thinking, you'll be more creative, you'll be more relaxed, you'll be more open, you'll be the best person you can possibly be. Now, if you want to be a great help to other people, when they are talking about their lives, say, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Help your children, help your staff. When they have a problem, say, what's good in this? Because there's always something good comes from every difficulty. What's the lesson that you're meant to learn from this? You help them to think creatively and positively and optimistically as well until it becomes a habit for them as well. Remember the old saying, you become what you teach. You learn what you teach. So therefore, when you teach these principles to others who can benefit from them, you actually internalize them more and more yourself until they become an automatic part of the way that you deal with life. The fourth key to optimism is to feed your mind continually. Come to courses like this, listen to audio programs, read the books, talk to positive people. Keep feeding your mind. Just like if you wanted to have a healthy body, you'd eat really nutritious foods. If you want to have a healthy mind, take in positive, nutritious, what Jim calls mental protein rather than mental candy. All right? Now, what we have found is that optimists have three remarkable qualities. Optimists, by the way, start off with an unrealistic expectation of success. What does this mean? That means they really expect to be successful in advance. They expect that everything that happens is positive in some way. They expect that every setback contains a lesson. They expect to be wealthy. An attitude of positive self-expectancy, expecting to be successful well in advance of success, improves your attitude, puts your dimmer switch on full, makes you more positive and creative, makes you more resilient to difficulties. You just keep getting up and you keep going like the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going and going. So there's three qualities that optimists have. Number one is they learn more things. And you know, we say that in our modern world, cause and effect means learn and do. They learn more things. As a result, they have more knowledge, more information, more insights, more skills, more ability to deal with our world today. Number two is they try more things. Now, I told you that I didn't graduate from high school, but in my 30s, I went to university and got a business degree. And in taking a business degree, you have to take a course called probability theory. Did anybody ever take probability theory? It's a terrible course, isn't it? It's awful, awful course. And the only one thing you learn from probability theory in retrospect is that there's a probability that everything will happen. And that these probabilities, is that true? That these probabilities can be calculated by a series of very, very sophisticated ways. All of life insurance is based on probability. All the stock market, the world of finance, probability is a major, major factor in life. And there's some great theories for probability theory, for predicting probabilities. So here's, if you flip a coin, the probability that it will come down heads or tails is what? It's 50%. 50-50 no matter how many times you flip the coin. The probability never changes. Your job in life is to increase the probabilities of success. Now, how do you increase the probabilities of success? Number one is you learn more things, so you have more understanding. And number two, you try more things. And if I was to tell you the keys to success, you'll find that all successful people try more things. And is there any guarantee that you will be successful? No. You will fail more times than you succeed, but if you try more things, it's like throwing darts at the dartboard. If you keep throwing darts over and over again, even if you're a complete idiot, what must you eventually hit? You must eventually hit a bullseye. And that's why you meet complete idiots who are rich, is they just kept throwing darts and they hit a bullseye. You know that story about the guys get together at the high school reunion after 20 years and the dumbest guy in the class is richer than all of them put together? And they said, how on earth could you do this? I mean, you weren't very much of a student. He said, well, I found this manufacturer that sold stuff for $1, and I could import it and sell it for $3 and make a profit. He said, it's amazing what you can do on 3% profit. Anyway, the third quality is that they persist longer. Now, all that you will ever learn from me and Jim and Donna and Dennis and everyone and Charlie is the same things. Learn more things, read, listen to audio programs, go to courses, try more things as a result of what you learn, take action, and then persist longer. And if you'll do that, your success is guaranteed. You'll find that every single person who is successful learned more things, tried more things, persisted until they succeeded. And every person who's a failure didn't. It's really, really simple. And what keeps you doing this is optimism. It's an attitude that no matter what happens, I will eventually succeed. It's only a matter of time. It doesn't matter what's going on now. If I just keep trying more things and persisting longer, I will succeed. And by gum, that becomes your fact. That becomes the fact of life. So I want to give you a quick exercise. I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to write down the answer to this question. What are your 3 most important goals in life right now? What are your 3 most important goals in life right now? You have 30 seconds, so write quickly. If you can't think of an answer, write money, money, money. 20 seconds left. Write quickly. 3 most important goals in life right now. 15 seconds. Write quickly. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Okay. This is called the quick list method, by the way. You can use this for the rest of your life. And what we have found is that if you only have 30 seconds to write the answer to this question, your answers will be as accurate as if you had 30 minutes or 3 hours. You can ask your spouse, honey, what are your 3 most important goals in life right now? And then compare them with yours and be prepared for a fun conversation. But ask your kids, son, daughter, what are your 3 most important goals in life right now? In our advanced coaching programs, we help people do this in every part of their lives. Now let me see if I can guess your 3 most important goals. I was in Las Vegas recently and I learned this trick on how you can read the minds of audiences. One of the guys showed me how, and I see if I remember how it works, okay? Let's see, you tune in. You may have to tune in. Okay, wait, rub your hands together. You have to tune in. Okay, it's coming clear. Shh. Okay, now I know what your 3 goals are. They were a financial goal, a relationship goal, and a health goal. How we do? Pretty good, huh? And for some people say, no, that's not what I wrote. Well, we'll get you some counseling later. That's what, that's what Jim Rohn coaching is for people, But the fact is, because those are the 3 critical parts of your life, your health, your finances, and your relationships, those will be your goals. And I'll even guarantee what your goal, guess what your goals are. Make more money, lose weight, become fitter, spend more time with the people you love. How's that? We doing pretty good there? So in other words, these are your goals. Now, here is your homework assignment. Your homework assignment is for the next 24 hours, think and talk about those 3 goals. Think and talk about those 3 goals, and the only question you ask is, how? How do I achieve them? Not whether they're achievable. We'll talk about how we firm them up a little bit in a couple of minutes, but how do we achieve them? And from now on, think and talk about what you want and how to get it. Whenever you want to help someone else, help them think and talk about what they want and how to get it. Help them look for the good in every situation. Help them seek the valuable lesson in every problem that they have. Keep feeding your mind with positive stuff so you keep getting better and better. I've got to tell you a quick story. Ole and Sven, they're up in Minnesota. They shoot a deer. They're dragging the deer back to the truck by the tail, and they keep slipping and losing their balance. And a farmer comes along and says, boys, what are you doing? He says, well, we're dragging the deer back to the truck. He said, well, boys, you're not supposed to drag a deer by the tail. That's awkward. God's provided that antler with, that deer with handles for dragging. They're called antlers. You're supposed to drag a deer by the antlers. He said, well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much, sir. So they went around, they started dragging the deer by the antlers, and they're whipping along, and after about 5 minutes, Ole says to Sven, Sven, the farmer was right. It'd go a lot easier by the antlers. He said, yeah, Ole, but we're getting further and further from the truck. The world is full of people who are pulling the easy way. They're doing what is fun and easy and watching television, having a good time, but they're getting further and further from the truck of their true goals, their true objectives, their true destination. Isn't that right? Say yes. Yes. Be back in 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Once upon a time, there was a dinner party that took place in Memphis, Tennessee. I was speaking for a large national corporation, a franchise organization where you could buy a franchise, and if you were successful, you could buy another franchise and so on. And I was the keynote speaker, so they had me sitting next to a very nice couple. This couple, it turned out, had become millionaires. And the story that they told me was very interesting because they were the top people in the organization. And this is a true story, they had, he had been a fireman, she had been a housewife. They lived in a small 1,100 square foot house, 2 bedrooms, they had 2 kids in one room and them in another room, and he was a fireman and he made enough and they made a living and she stayed at home. And they worked through their teens and then their 20s and into their 30s, but they didn't have any real concern, they told me, because as soon as Aunt Martha died, everything would be okay. You see, they had an Aunt Martha who was very wealthy. And Aunt Martha had a husband and her wealth, And Aunt Martha had come over to their home and had dinner with them and Christmas and Easter and so on. And there were other brothers and sisters in the family. But Aunt Martha had confided to them that when she does pass on someday, that everything she has would be left to them. So they knew that when Aunt Martha died, they'd be rich. So he kept on working away, him at his job, union fireman job, not very happy. They didn't have much money. For them, a big night out was Arby's, and that was only once a month. But they didn't have to worry because when Aunt Martha died, perished the thought, but when Aunt Martha passed on, they would be rich. Year after year went by, into their 20s, into their 30s, and Aunt Martha looked remarkably healthy. And they gave her gifts and sent her cards, and all the kids wrote letters to her, and they had her over for meals and so on, and they treated her very, very well. But you know, perish the thought, but you know, they're now in their 30s, and Aunt Martha is still just trucking away. She's in her 60s or 70s, and one day he looked at her across the table, and she looked back at him, and she said, women are wise, and she said, what if Aunt Martha lives another 20 years? There's longevity in the family. Are we going to be sitting here at this Formica kitchen table worried about money for 20 years waiting for Aunt Martha to die? And it hit him and it hit her, and they got so, it's almost like a flashbulb went off. They said no. And they said, then let's start doing something. Let's imagine Aunt Martha's going to live forever. If Aunt Martha's going to live forever, that is different. So they decided, they began exploring. He began working for what was turned out to be a janitorial service in the evening. Then he bought a franchise from ServPro, and he built the franchise up, and he found he had a natural knack for it. And so he built another franchise, and he called it. Pretty soon, he was running it. His wife was running it out of the house. Pretty soon, after 2 or 3 years, he quit his union job, began working it full time, built up a whole series of franchises. He was a millionaire. He was a great success. When he went into that organization, they did everything but throw flowers in his path. He was a symbol of what was possible for an average person to create a wonderful business. He and his wife were confident. They were well dressed. They were warm, friendly. Everybody liked them, and so on. And they said, and if we had not made that decision across that kitchen table, we'd still be there in that little crummy house. I said, and what's the rest of the story? The rest of the story was that Aunt Martha lived another 20 years. And when she died, all the other members of the family, the brothers and sisters on both sides, they'd all been waiting for Aunt Martha to die. And when they got there to the reading of the will, and they were talking, all the others were confident. They were there, they didn't care, they were wealthy. All the others were confident because Aunt Martha, turned out, had promised every one of them that they were her favorite, and she was leaving all her money to them. And when they read the will, Aunt Martha was penniless. She had no money at all. She'd been broke for years and living off the good graces of her relatives by telling them she was going to leave all her money to them. Now, there's a reason that I tell you the story, aside from the fact that it's true, is what is your Aunt Martha? You know, what are you waiting for to happen before you go for it? You know that in life, successful people just commit. Does anybody play Texas Hold'em? You could admit it. Okay. In Texas Hold'em, they have, and by the way, it's a remarkable game because there's something in there that appeals to the American imagination, is you reach a point where you're down to the point where you cannot raise, you cannot bet, and you have to go all in. If you don't go all in and take a chance of losing it all, you'll be wiped out. Every so often you see a person who wins because they went all in with weak cards. Have you seen that on the World Championships of Poker? You push all the money in. Nobody can bet higher than your whole pot. But if you lose, you're finished. In life, we have to go all in at times. At certain times in life, we have to do our research, do our homework, and then go all in. We have to stop waiting for Aunt Martha to die. I have a good friend. I had talked with him just the other day. He's an accountant. He came from a working class family. His father was a butcher. When he grew up in his late teens, his father got him into the butchers union, the meat cutters union, and he went off and started working summers as a meat cutter, learning how to cut meat. His father wanted him to be a butcher as well. Well, after a summer of cutting meat, he decided he didn't like this. He decided he wanted to continue his education. Didn't have any money, so he went to community college. This is in San Diego. Went to community college. In community college, he took a couple of business courses and accounting courses, developed a real love for accounting. And as Donna was saying earlier, follow the area that you really like. He got into accounting, and he worked hard, and when he got out of school, he got his degree, he got a job with a small accounting firm, and then another accounting firm. He ended up working with Price Waterhouse. And at Price Waterhouse, he was doing real well. And one of his partners was a woman who was also an accountant, also came from an average family. And they started talking about forming their own firm. They said Price Waterhouse only likes to work with big companies, and there's a whole unserved market of small and middle-sized companies that need accounting services that can't afford to pay the big bucks. They could start a firm, and they could offer services, and by hiring accountants out of school at low levels, they could provide the same quality of services that they learned how to provide at Price Waterhouse. They put together a business plan, they knew how to do that, and a market plan, and a sales plan, and an organization plan, and a financial plan. And they put it all together, and they're going to start their own company. And at the last minute, he said, I chickened out. He said, I was so concerned about security. My father always told me, security is everything. Get a job, keep the job, be secure, don't take a chance. He said, so I chickened out. And we separated. She said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. We've done all the planning, the market is there. And she walked out, and she rolled the dice, and she went all in. And she started her own accounting firm. He said he had lunch with her 2 weeks ago. She's now about 45, as he is. She has an accounting firm with 34 staff. She's worth about $4 million. She lives in a beautiful home with beautiful children. She's married extremely well. He said, all the equity I own in my life, in my working life, is what's in my home, is the increase in value in my home. He said, by deciding not to get into my own business, he said, I decided to stay broke all my adult life. The worst mistake I ever made, because I was afraid to take a risk. I was waiting for some Aunt Martha to die. Now, there's only 3 ways that you and I are going to get out of this life financially independent. One is you're going to win the lottery. And 64% of Americans believe that the only way they're going to achieve financial independence is if they somehow win the lottery. If you ever, one of the things that I am totally opposed to, by the way, philosophically, is gambling. I'm totally opposed to gambling, because everybody who gambles loses. If you ever want to have a real good look at gambling, watch the movie Casino with Robert De Niro, and how they talk about the suckers. And these people, the longer they keep them here, the more guaranteed they'll walk away with nothing. And that every single gambler leaves with nothing. It's only a matter of time. I am totally opposed to Indian casinos throughout this state, because what they do is they suck off the hard work of young men and women. They take food off the trays, and they destroy the long-term future of people who invest that discretionary funds, or if you like, gamble it away, and don't have it to do something else with. So you can win the lottery. Now, your chance to win the lottery about 11 million to 1, the equivalent of being struck by lightning twice in the same place 2 years apart. In other words, you're never going to win the lottery. The lottery is called the stupidity tax. It's the only tax you pay voluntarily. Okay? If you do invest in the lottery, they don't even give you the money if you win. Have you noticed that? First of all, they lop off 50% in taxes, then they give you it spread over 20 years. Everybody know what I'm talking about? If a private company set up a lottery like that, they'd all be put in prison. Okay? They consider that to be a great act of skullduggery and embezzlement of the public, and the government does it to us all the time. So you're not going to win the lottery, all right? Number 2 is somebody could die, Aunt Martha, somewhere. Somebody relative that you don't know of, somewhere on the far side of the world, could die and leave you a pile of money. Okay? But I'm here to tell you, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings, it ain't going to happen. There is no long-lost rich relative that's going to leave you a lot of money. So the only other way you can do it is by earning it yourself. Right? Are you with me so far? Say yes. Okay, so the only question is what? The only question is how? How do we earn it ourselves? Well, there are several steps that we can take. Now, we don't have enough time to go into great depth in the things I've talked about, so I'm going to give you some key principles that are important. W. Clement Stone, who was actually the person who funded and underwrote Napoleon Hill, W. Clement Stone, who started as a 12-year-old boy selling papers on the streets of Chicago, fatherless, and built an $800 million fortune, just died a couple of years ago. He lived forever. A lot of people waiting for him to die. He lived to about 102. He outlived all the people waiting for him to die. Anyway, he said, in one of his most profound observations, he said, if you cannot save money, then the seeds of greatness are not in you. If you cannot save money, the seeds of greatness are not in you. Now, one of the great truths of today is that all the answers have been found. If you want to become a millionaire, you can become a millionaire. If you want to become a millionaire, you must decide to become a millionaire. I was talking to somebody recently who was in college with this guy who never got very good grades. And he was telling me this story. It's really interesting. Again, it was 15, 20 years ago. This guy never got very good grades. And he said, well, why are you here? He said, well, I want to make a lot of money. He said, well, how are you going to do that? And he said, I have no idea. He said, but by gum, I want to make a lot of money when I leave school. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a lot of money. And I have no idea how I'm going to do it. Today, this guy owns about 12 businesses. He's worth millions of dollars. He said he had that one blazing idea when he was in school he was going to make a lot of money. And if your goal is to make a lot of money, and if that becomes your goal, then you will make a lot of money. But if you have a whole bunch of other goals, it's like shooting a shotgun. If you had a door right here and you shot a double-barreled shotgun at the door, blam, what would happen? You'd blow it off its hinges. I mean, that's what the SWAT teams use to knock doors off their hinges. If you put that same door on the side of a field, on the other side of a field, leaning against a fence, and you fired a shotgun at it, what would happen? Well, the expression they use is pepper spray. It would feel like pepper spray, like somebody had thrown a bunch of peppercorns at it, because traveling across the field, the buckshot would spread and hit the wind and eventually dissipate and lose its energy, and whatever pellets arrived there would have no force at all. But what if you took a rifle, and you aimed it at that door on the other side of a field? What would happen? Blam! It knocked the door down. Why? It's because a rifle is absolutely focused. So what we know is that the key to success is, first of all, you have to know exactly what you want, and then second of all, you have to focus and concentrate. You have to focus and concentrate. I have found that the power of clarity is being absolutely clear about the fact that you want to make a lot of money and become financially independent. Does this mean that you become like Scrooge McDuck or like a miser or somebody who's a penny pincher? No. As a matter of fact, you find that most self-made millionaires, their greatest pride in life is their family. Their greatest source of expenditure is on their spouse and on their children. The reason that they work hard is so that they can provide a good life for the people that they love and care about. And that's more important to them than the money. But once the family is put aside, which is their primary concern, then the money is everything. And they're very, very fastidious about every single penny. I worked for a man many years ago, and I learned a lot from him. He died worth $800 million. He started with nothing, and he built an $800 million fortune. He ran 200 corporations. He was the smartest man I ever met. He could read a contract and from the back forward. He could flip it like this and quote it back to you 6 months later. I mean, I'd have to carry it around to reread it today. He could quote it back to me and point out things in it, and he could even he would go read it, and he would put a stop and go back to that page, and he said, this is the clause we need to negotiate. I mean, this guy was smart. He died worth $800 million, but you know, nothing gave him greater pleasure than to sit at the counter of the delicatessen up the street and eat a cheap pastrami sandwich for lunch. This guy owned the building, he owned the street, he owned most of the property, and he loved to save money. And what I found, he lived in a beautiful home in Palm Springs, he had beautiful homes, he had a private jet that was at his call at all times, but when it came to thinking about expenditures, he was very, very frugal. Now, my friends who wrote The Millionaire Next Door said that there's one quality that seems to be characteristic of all self-made millionaires. It's frugality, is that they save their money. They're very careful with their money until they're wealthy. He said people who earn an enormous amount of money, in Texas they call them big hat, no cattle. In other words, they make a lot of money, but they're broke. They got no cattle. They got a big hat, but no cattle. These people spend their money as fast as they make it. Do you know that most of the people who look like they have money don't really have any? And the people that don't look like they have money often are millionaires. Why? It's because they say that the number one problem is the inability to refrain from spending. People make the money and they have this incredible desire to spend it. So I'm going to give you 3 keys to getting your finances under control and beginning the process of becoming millionaires. My promise to you is that if you decide to become a millionaire, you will. And the first part of becoming a millionaire is the hardest. Here's an interesting graph that was done. Remember the 80-20 rule? Here's 80% of the time. Here's 20% of the time. This is the way people become wealthy. Is they achieve most of their wealth in the last 20% of the process. In the first 80% of the process, they're learning, they're saving, they're growing, they're making mistakes. Progress seems very slow. And what happens to most people in the first part of the process if progress is slow? They quit. They quit and they spend it all and go back to zero. But what you do is you just keep on keeping on, knowing that you're getting smarter and smarter, and at a certain point, you hit a flash point, and at this point, all that experience that you've had will suddenly start to pay off I've spoken to lots of people here today who are wealthy who've had the same experience. You work for a long time. But if you have the patience and the confidence and the trust that if you just keep slogging away, at a certain point you hit the takeoff point. And at this takeoff point, you'll start to make money. I never understood this when I heard Napoleon Hill write about it 50, 75 years ago. You develop a prosperity consciousness. At a certain point, the tide turns and the money begins to flow to you like a river. And what would have taken you 10 or 20 years to earn, you earn in a month or 2 months. And you can't even believe this until it happens. Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? By the way, it's a most remarkable thing. And so this is our goal. But in order, in the Bible, and Jim quotes the Bible, remember it's the parable of the talents, which is very interesting. It said, "O good and faithful servant, you have been faithful over small things, I will make you master over many." And the only way that you can become a millionaire is by first becoming a 100-aire, and then a 500-aire, and then a 1,000-aire, and then a 2,000-aire, and so on. People say, well, I want to jump from here to great financial success. That has never happened and will never happen. The era of the dot-com was an aberration in human history. It wiped out $5 trillion worth of wealth and probably destroyed more lives financially than any other plague in history. That's never going to happen again. The way that we make money is we work hard and save our money. So number one rule, as you've heard 1,000 times, is pay yourself first. Pay yourself first, which means to save 10 to 20% of your income. I was talking with David Bach on the phone the other day. Does anybody know who David Bach is? David Bach is a really nice young guy. He's a financial planner who's got a book, and it's the #1 book this week on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. It's called The Automatic Millionaire. And people are buying this book by the thousands. He has 2 other books, Nice Women Finish Rich, Nice Men Finish Rich. And he's got 3 books in the top 10 in the financial bestsellers. Do you know what the books say? Pay yourself first. And people are paying and buying the book and going, wow, what an incredible concept. And he talks to people who come in, working people. The guy's a truck driver, she's a waitress, and they come in to plan their finances. He feels a little sorry for them because they got kind of crummy clothes and they got kind of working class jobs, and together they never made more than $50,000 in their lives, and they're 45 or 50, and then he shows them, this is what the Automatic Millionaire starts with, then they show him their financial plan. They're worth $2.3 million. And they never made more than $50,000 a year. They own homes and cars and businesses and everything else. Why? It's because they just saved their money and invested it carefully. So we say in order to qualify for big things, you've got to do little things. If you want to be in the championships, you've got to fight you've got to compete in the smaller competitions. So number one, pay yourself first 10 to 20%. Now here is the great challenge, is most people can't do this. Most people say, geez, 10 or 20%. So what I say is this, is start with 1%. Start with 1% of your income. Is there anybody here who could not save 1% of their income? If somebody put a gun to your head, say, if you don't save 1% of your income, it'll blow your brains out. Can anybody here not work it out? Say yes. Okay, we can all do it. So therefore, you save 1%. If you make $5,000 a month, that means you save $50 a month. You open up a separate bank account, and just as religiously as if you're going to be shot if you don't do it, you put $50 a month in that bank account, 1 crummy percent. Now, simultaneously, whenever you get any extra money or something you didn't expect, a bonus, an IRS refund, or something else, just put it into that account. This becomes your financial accumulation account. When you become comfortable saving 1% a month, then you move it to 2% a month. And then you move it to 3% a month. And you do this until you become comfortable. And it's very much like changing the direction of a great ocean liner. As this ocean liner begins to change and change direction, it's very, very subtle, 1 degree at a time. But what you're doing is you're bringing about a fundamental subconscious change from spending everything you make to not spending everything you make. The rule for financial success has been the same for 5,000 years. Spend less than you earn. 5 words. Spend less than you earn. This has been the rule. If you can do this, you can achieve financial independence. If you can't, you can't. So the question is not whether it's possible, but only how. It's only how. Okay, how do we do it? So what we do is we save 1%, and we put it into an account. Now, this is not an account, by the way, for fun, an RV, a vacation, or something else. Open other accounts for that. Jim will talk about that, as do other people. Just save 1%, and then 2%, and then 3%, until you develop the saving habit. And pretty soon, within a year or 2, you'll have it up to 10 to 20%. Now, I never understood this, but what happens is that when you save money, carefully like this, this money begins to develop an energy. It begins to become a force field. It begins to develop an energy of attraction. And there's a law in the universe called the law of accumulation. It says the more you accumulate, the more you accumulate. And the more you have here, the more money you attract into your life. And what happens is you get little bits of money from here and a bonus from there and unexpected money from there, and you save something from here. Instead of blowing it, which we normally do, you put it into this account, and each penny, dollar you put into the account increases the energy. It's almost like this is uranium, and it's increasing the energy power. And it starts to draw more money. It becomes like a force field of energy. Does anybody know about this? It's the most phenomenal darn thing. Many years ago, we were broke. We had to sell our house because I started a business and made every single conceivable mistake. We had to sell. I learned to sell again. We sold our house, sold our furniture, sold our dishes, sold everything, moved to a rented house. And when we sold the house, there was $10,000 left over from carrying costs. And my wife said, I want to put that in a separate account so we're never out of money again. And I argued with her. I said, yes, but we've got all these things. There's always something to spend it on. And she was adamant. You know what I told you about negotiating? She was adamant about this. She took the money, she put it into a separate account, which I didn't even know where it was. And they put that $10,000 away. I couldn't touch it, and she wouldn't touch it. From that day onward, we were never out of money again. It's almost as if we just changed the dynamics of the universe. Now, we worked hard, we went up and down. From that day on, we were never out of money again. Because that money just sat there, and it attracts money, opportunities, ideas. This is such a powerful principle. It's why people become wealthy. So your job is to pay yourself first. And start off by saving 1% per year. Now, here is the second principle, and it's called the wedge strategy for achieving wealth. Is that in life, this is what happens. You've heard the old Parkinson's law that expenses rise to meet income. In other words, no matter how much you make, you spend that amount. Well, so this is what will happen over the course of your lifetime. If you keep engaging in additional knowledge and skill, you'll learn more, you'll earn more, you'll be paid more, you'll increase the slope on your curve, you'll move ahead faster, but if you're not careful, you'll burn it all. Most wealthy people are 2 months away from homelessness. If their income was cut off, doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, if these people's income was cut off for any period of time, within 2 months they would be foreclosed on, because they're spending everything they have and a little bit more besides. So this is your income. So this is your income, and this is time. Now what happens is the natural tendency is for our expenses, this is our income, and these are our expenses. Our expenses just go like this. No matter what happens, we just can't get ahead, because we keep raising our expenditures, like jacking them up, and we never get a gap. So here's the goal. If I were to ask you to save from your income today, most people have a hard time doing it, because every penny you have is committed. So what I'm going to ask you to do from this moment on is to save future income. So if I were to give you $1, if I was to say, Karen, here's $1, if I give you $1, would you save 50 cents of it? Now, if I give you $1 that you don't have, it's not too hard to commit to saving half of what you don't have, right? Are you with me so far? So this is what you're going to do, and you're going to make a deal from now on, is you're going to save 50% of your increase. So you figure out what your income is today, and as you use the techniques here, you're going to become more skilled at making money. So from now on, save 50% of the increase and allow your standard of living to go up by 50%. Is that a pretty good trade-off? Say yes. In other words, you're not going to suffer, you're not going to die, you're not going to be hungry, your living standard will go up, you will be able to enjoy more things, but save half of all your increase for the rest of your life. My promise to you is if you start early enough, and you save half of your increase, you'll become wealthy. Because this amount of money will compound. And as Albert Einstein said, compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. If you start to put $1, $2, $3, start to invest it carefully and let it grow and compound, in time, they say $1 invested at 3% interest at the time of Christ would be worth all the money in the world today, because it would have grown so much with compound interest over 2,000 years. So your job is to practice the wedge strategy. From now on, you sit down and say, all right, exactly how much are we earning today? Whatever it is, from now on, whatever we earn above that, fully 50% will be saved. So this is the starting point of getting out of debt and getting your finances under control. But it's the foundation. If you can't do this, you can't do anything. If you can't save a nickel, you can't make $1 million. Are you with me so far? Say yes. Zig says that if you will be hard on yourself, life will be easy on you. But if you insist upon being easy on yourself, life is going to be very hard on you. And the starting point is with the next dollar. One critical point, and this is interesting psychologically, oh boy, this is good stuff, is that when you are a young person and you're told to save your money, you develop, remember I told you about the goblins, the financial goblins we have, the gremlins in our minds. When you're told to save your money, that means you're not buying candy. If you have an allowance, allowance means candy. It means toys, it means fun, it means ice cream. And so, you should save part of your income. You should save 10% or 50 cents or whatever it happens to be. But that, you associate saving money with pain. That means you can't get candy. Now, you're just a kid. You're not working this out philosophically. You're just saying save money means don't buy candy. Now, when you're an adult, what has happened is this is programmed deep in your subconscious mind, and when you think of saving money, the first thought you think of is sacrifice, pain, hurts, no candy. And what you have to do is you have to go back into your subconscious mind and rewire it like an electrician and hook up the wires differently so that saving money makes me happy. Because what we have found is that all people who are wealthy enjoy caring for their money. Now here's another thing, is money goes where it's loved and appreciated. If you love your money, the money will come to you more. How do you tell that you love your money? Because you tend it carefully. You take good care of it. I don't know whether it was Jim or Dennis or somebody else said, but you could pretty much tell a person's financial status by looking at the way they carry their money. People whose financial life is a mess, their purse is full of coins and $1 bills and fives, and they go scooping through it like looking for a diamond ring in a pile of dog poop, to look for money. But if you look at other people, and I learned this, it's a very simple thing, is fold your money, keep it folded, you should know it, have all the heads facing one direction, have all the denominations so they're in a proper order. Just take a couple of minutes to organize your money. And what that does, it exerts a reverse influence on your subconscious mind with regard to money. And does anybody know what I'm talking about? If the things that we do physically have an emotional impact on us, if we get all of our financial life organized and keep our money organized and our coins organized, by the very act of that, we treat our money better and we attract more money into our life. Money goes where it's loved and appreciated. It doesn't go where it's treated in a haphazard or indifferent fashion. And from now on, think, I love to save money. Just say it, I love to save money. I love to have money in the bank. And in time, you will look at your bank account and your investment account, and it'll make you happy. And you will no longer have this urge to blow the money. Most people, when they get a bonus, they say, oh, I got a bonus, I got to blow it. Let's go and spend it somewhere, all right? Now, the second thing you do is if you're working for someone else, if someone else is signing your paycheck now, remember this, there's 2 or 3 keys to getting ahead fast. Your job is to be in the top 10% in your field. Remember, whoever is in the top 10% in their field today started where? In the bottom 10%. And whatever anybody else has done, you can do as well, because nobody is smarter than you and nobody is better than you. So here's 3 or 4 keys to getting paid more and promoted faster. Number 1 is focus on contribution. Focus on contribution. Most people are so focused on what they get, they don't realize. Focus on contribution, focus on results. Always ask yourself, how can I make a greater contribution? And these are the words, how can I add value to my company? Now, there's several ways you could add value, and number 2 is to upgrade your skills continually. You'll find that Dennis and I and Jim all talk about this importance of continuous learning. Upgrade your skills. I have studied and written courses on time management for years. I'm an expert on the subject. I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty knowledgeable. Do you know I found one of the best time management tools in the world is get better at what you do. When I learned that many years ago, I almost fell off my chair. Getting better at what you do, which increases the slope on your curve and the speed at which you make more money and the amount of money you make, will save you 5 and 10 years. We're not talking about cutting a couple of minutes or hours off the day. We're talking about years of hard work off your life just by getting better at the most important things you do. And remember, if anybody else can be in the top 10% in anything, you can be as well. Quick story. This gentleman came up to me at my seminar. I said, ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about today is not rocket science. He came up and he said, I heard that comment about rocket science. He said, I'm in sales. I'm 28 years old. He said, and I'd heard many people say over the years, this is not rocket science, this is not rocket science. I began wondering, what would it take to get a degree in rocket science? And when I was a kid, I loved rockets. I used to practice with rockets, and I got toy rockets, and I got rocket posters, and I used to watch the takeoffs at Cape Canaveral, and then my parents got me rocket books. I mean, that was my thing. And when I got into high school, you know, I discovered girls and forgot about rockets, and then went into college and then got into sales. I said, I wonder what it would take to get a degree in rocket science. So I went back to the college, and I said, you know, I'm really interested in rocket science. What would it take? They said, well, you'd have to take these prerequisite courses, you'd have to take this, you'd have to do that, you'd have to take summer courses and so on, but this is the prescribed courses that you'd have to take to get a degree, just like we talked about a little bit earlier in engineering. So he decided that's going to be his project. So he went back to work. He's in sales, just like you and I. He's an entrepreneur. He went back to work in evenings and weekends. Instead of playing golf or watching television, he just studied rocket science. He said, May, I graduated at the university with a degree in rocket science. He said, now when somebody says, you know, this is not rocket science, he said, I know, I got a degree in rocket science. he said, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. Now, here's my point. Anybody in this room, if you wanted to get a degree in rocket science, if you cared about it enough, you could do it. You are smart enough to accomplish virtually anything that you could even imagine you could do in life. Nobody's smarter than you. Nobody's better than you. If they're ahead of you on the road of life, it means two things. Is they got on the road first, and they have proven that you can do the same thing they've done. If somebody is doing well, it's proof that you can do it as well. Now, people say, well, I want to be a billionaire in a year. That is a dumb thing. Why don't you be a 100-aire in a year? Why don't you be a 1,000-aire in a year? Say, well, I want to be a billionaire in a year. I want to be a millionaire in a year. How long does it take to master your field? Well, whether it's selling or neurosurgery or diesel mechanics, or whether it's rocket science or whether it's optometry or haircutting, how long does it take? It takes 7 years. It takes 10,000 hours in 7 years to master your craft. 10,000 hours in 7 years. Now, one of the greatest diseases that has afflicted America, like an epidemic that has swept the country psychologically, is quick fix. I want quick fix. I want to take my entire wasted life and turn it around by Monday. I want to be financially independent in a year, and I want to be free from decades of silly things that I've done with my life, and I want to get it all back. And that's not how it works. What you do is you begin turning this great ocean liner slowly. It takes 7 years. Now, I've studied mastery, and I've studied it for years. I've studied all these subjects because they're so important to me. All the studies say 10,000 hours in your craft, 7 years. Now, people say, oh, my God, 7 years. I'm 30. I'll be 37 years old. Jeez. Well, how much older will you be in 7 years in any case? The fact is, and please write this on your hand, the fact is the time is going to pass anyway. The time is going to pass anyway. The only question is where are you going to be in 7 years? Are you going to still be lost on the back roads? Are you worried about money? Or are you going to be on the high road and moving ahead faster and faster? Peter Drucker, who's probably the best management theorist in the history of the world, Peter Drucker says no business makes money within 4 years. In the first 4 years. It takes 2 years to break even. The first 2 years, what you do is you mortgage, you hypothecate, you borrow, beg, steal, and lie every penny you possibly can to survive. The second 2 years, you make more than it costs, and you begin to pay off your debts. At the end of 4 years, you start to make a profit. It takes 7 years to make a business success. Now, if that is the rule, people say, I'm going to beat the numbers. No, you're not. You're not going to beat the odds. People say, I'm going to live to be 150. No, you're not. You're not going to beat the odds. You're not going to beat the probabilities. What you do is you say, okay, these are the facts of life, so get on with it. If you want to be at the top of your field, there's nothing can stop you from being one of the highest paid, most successful people in your field if you just get on with it. And don't expect to do it overnight. Is just begin to take the courses, upgrade your skills, add value. And here's the final key, and this is the key to leadership, is ask for responsibility. Ask for more responsibility. It's interesting, there are some people who are completely incapable of working for another company who become entrepreneurs. But these people often are not successful entrepreneurs because they're just simply disorganized. Look at Jeff Bezos, very successful entrepreneur. Worked for other large companies within structures for years. What Drucker found is that 90% of people who become successful when they start their own business have worked for more than 5 years within an organizational structure. So they understand that a business has a series of inputs and outputs. There's organization, and there's finance and planning and administration and sales and marketing and cost accounting and so on. And they understand the dynamics of a business. It's like surgery. There's certain things that need to be done in a certain way for the patient to survive. In business, there's certain things that you need to learn and get systematic over and over again before you succeed. So asking for more responsibility is the thing that moves you to the front of the line. Because the person who's always raising their hand say, I'll do that. And I used to work for this gentleman, and I told him, when I started off, I was a junior employee in his large company. And whenever I was on top of my work, which was very fast because I'd start earlier and work hard and stay late, I'd say, I like more responsibility. I want more responsibility. Just give me more responsibility. And eventually he'd say, well, try this. And I'd take it like a dog going after a stick. More responsibility. And here's the key. When they give you more responsibility, do it fast. When you get a chance, do it fast. When you get your break, do it fast. When the line opens up and you can run for yards, go through that line. It's when you get the responsibility, the chance, the opportunity, move fast. All successful people move fast. They're like falcons falling. They move fast. They don't say, well, I'll get to it next week, week after next. I remember once he gave me an assignment, and he gave me the assignment on Tuesday. He said, in the next couple of weeks, I'd like you to look at this. It was to look at a piece of land that they were buying in Reno. The next day, I got on a plane and flew to Reno. I arrived there Wednesday night. On Thursday, I went out to look at the land and speak to the lawyers in charge of it, and I get this terrible feeling something was wrong. And what I found, I won't go into the story, but I tell you, in one solid day of moving around, I found that my company had been cheated, that they'd been sold a piece of bare land that had no water, could never be developed for $2 million. It was a worthless piece of rock. In fact, half the business people in Reno knew that somebody from out of town had been sold this piece of property and were wondering if they'd pull it off. They'd been trying to unload this property to an unsuspecting investor for years. They had tried to cheat this person, and at the last minute, I went to the lawyer and I demanded a $250,000 check from their trust fund. And he said, thank God you found out. He said, working for the other party, he said, I couldn't say anything. Thank God you found out. He wrote the check for me at 5 minutes to 5. The deal was supposed to close at 5 o'clock. I took the check home and I picked it back to my boss and I told him what happened. He said, He said, so you went the day after I asked you to go, not the following week, which I suggested. Yes, From then on, he just started to deal me responsibilities. I made him $50 million in the next 3 years. He gave me housing developers and buildings and offices and shopping centers and unbelievable stuff. And so my point was that the one action of just moving fast on one thing suddenly bumped me ahead of everybody else I'd started with in that company. And from then on, I was the go-to guy. You be the go-to person in your company. There's nothing that will move you to the top of your business faster than to ask for more responsibility and fulfill it quickly. Be known as the person, if you want something done fast, give it to him, give it to her. That causes your star to rise. It will cause other people to try to hire you away. They'll pay you more to keep you. They'll give you bonuses. I ended up later learning, because when I started my own business, I hired an accountant from his company who had been in charge of the finances on my deals. She said he paid you more than he ever paid anybody in his business career in bonuses for the amount of money that you made him. And by the way, you didn't have too many friends in that company. All the others who knew about it were real angry. Okay. Starting your own business, I'll just give you 2 more points. Starting your own business, what is Michael Jordan's wonderful recommendation for success in American life? Just do it. All self-made millionaires own their own businesses. So how do you start your own business? Well, America is one of the most wonderful countries in the world. All you have to do is you sit right where you are and you say, I am now the president of my own business, and you now are. If you name it after yourself, what is your name, Adam? Pardon?
Rita.
Rita, and what's your last name?
You can't pronounce it. Virolaide.
Virolaide?
Yes.
Okay, Rita Virolaide and Associates, Rita Virolaide, president. You have your own business cards made up. From now on, you're the president of your own company. Now, there's a wonderful American philosophical principle, which is this. If you build it, they will come. If you create a vacuum in the universe, nature will fill the vacuum. If you set up your own company, and what you do is you set up a sole proprietorship or an S corporation. Why? It's because 100% of the money that you invest in a sole proprietorship or an S corporation is deductible from your taxable income. If you set up a C corporation, only your profits are deductible, and there won't be profits for a while. So you set up an S corporation, and you can do it on the internet. There's all kinds of inexpensive ways to do it. Set up a company, name it after yourself if you like. Call it Dale Wernette and Associates or Karen Wernette and Associates, and put yourself as the president. Now you have a company. You now have what is called a shelf company. And I promise you this, within 3 to 6 months, something will happen that will enable you to activate your company. A business opportunity will appear that goes into your company. It's the most amazing things will start to happen. Your whole mind will shift when you have your own company. Have your own business cards made up that say president. When you're out with somebody else, they say, Dale, well, let me give you I'll give you a call later on this week. Yeah, call me on my private line. Dale Burnett, president. Geez, I've never known you to be president of anything. Yeah, the president of my own professional services corporation. Really, what sort of things do you do? Well, Dale, do you have a bank account? Do you have any insurance? Do you have a home? Do you have a car? Go to restaurants, stay in hotels, use a computer? Well, we're in banking, insurance, real estate, hotels, restaurants, airlines, computers, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. If I told you more than that, I'd have to kill you. Remember, every part of your financial life is part of your financial life. Set up your own company. From now on, you're the president of your own company. Do you know, I work with Fortune 500 companies when I do some of my seminars. Who do you think I talk to finalize my seminars? I talk to the presidents. I talk to presidents of multi-billion-dollar corporations. I have lunch with the presidents. Why? Because I'm the president. Presidents have lunch with presidents, not with the lower-level staff. Or heavens, my point is this. When you start to call yourself the president, what happens to your own self-esteem and your own self-concept? You start to see yourself as a totally different person. You start to see yourself as the kind of person who is the president. Now, does it happen overnight? Don't expect things to happen overnight. You start to see yourself and think about yourself. You're responsible. You're in charge of your own life. You have your own business. You're president of your own personal services corporation. Then you start looking for opportunities, and you always start on a small scale. People say, well, I don't have any money. Shut up. Nobody has any money. Most businesses in America are built on what is called bootstrapping. They put enough money in to get started, they buy something and they sell it at a profit, and they reinvest their profits. All the great businesses are bootstrapped. It's only after 5 or 8 or 10 years of success from bootstrapping that people will actually go out and start borrowing money. Hewlett-Packard, you know, is a $30 billion company, 92,000 employees. They have a rule at Hewlett-Packard, it's called pay-as-you-go. They don't carry debt. If they cannot pay it out of current profits, then they don't buy it. They don't invest in it. They're not an indebted company. They sell shares and everything else. But your life and my life has to be the same thing, pay as you go. And if you have that philosophy, people say, well, you can't borrow money from the bank. No bank would lend you money anyway. It'd be insane. Because why? It's because banks are in the business of making safe loans. Banks like to have 400% collateralization for any loan. It means they want you to have $4 for every dollar they give you, plus they want your firstborn son and one of your arms put into a vice in other words, banks are not in the business of making speculative loans, but if you demonstrate that you can be responsible with money, that you can invest it, that you can make it work, and that you can make it grow, they start to line up to give you money. They throw you money, like Ditech. You know, like those Ditech commercials, they all want to lend you money. They all want to lend you money when you demonstrate your financial responsibility. So the first rule in starting your own business is just to do it. Before the next week is out, if you don't have your own business, start your own business. Name it after yourself. You can always change the name later. Put your home address on it if you need to. Now the last point, and then we have to go, has to do with real estate. Now, people say you can buy real estate with no money down. Well, I know enough of this about real estate. If you're going to get into real estate, take one of the great seminars that's being offered on real estate investing. They are really good seminars. By the way, has anybody been to one of these real estate seminars? Are they good seminars? They're very good seminars. Don't try to figure it out for yourself. What they'll do is they'll show you how to start very small, where you invest what is called sweat equity. The time to go out and look at homes, to compare them. The rule in buying real estate with no money down, my friend Dolph DeRoos, who's got the best-selling book, Real Estate Riches, is called 100. Does anybody know this? 100, 10, 3, 1. Has anybody heard that? You have to look at 100 homes before you find 10 where they will not charge you, they will not ask for cash, they'll take it back. And of the 10, you make offers on 3, and of the 3, you get 1. And so therefore, for every 100 houses you look at, which is going to take you a lot of time, you get 1 house. I know a guy in Phoenix, by the way, and he has only one way of buying homes. He goes and says, I'll pay you cash for your house if you sell it to me for half price. He gets a lot of dogs sicked on him. He gets chased off. He gets sworn at. They turn the hoses on him. He buys about 1 house a month. He has only one strategy. He goes and asks, lowball, I'll give you half price for your home. Now, he sometimes gets them for 60% and 70% because he finds what is called a motivated seller. A person just wants to get out of the house and move. And so once a month he buys a house. He now owns 29 houses. He's got a net worth of over $2 million. He has a monthly income of $22,000. He's as dumb as ditch water. I'll tell you what, I mean, he couldn't carry a conversation to the post box, and yet he's worth all this money. Anyway, let me wrap up with two points. This is the very best time in all of human history to be alive. And that you are the very best people in all of human history to be alive in the very best country at the very best time. America has now hit the takeoff point where it's going to hockey stick. More millionaires are going to be created in the next few years than have ever been created in history. Most of the great millions, we have no idea where they'll come from. And your job is to be one of them. And you'll be one of them if you decide to. Because the world America now has something like 5 million millionaires. There's hundreds of thousands of millions of people who started with nothing who became financially independent. If they can do it, you can do it. Because they're not as smart as you. Nobody's smarter than you. Nobody's better than you, right? Your job is to make a decision, set it down as a goal, develop a plan, and work on the plan every day. You set some very specific financial goals. Begin saving your money $1 at a time. Begin saving your money 1% a month. Begin building up financial assets so that you have assets to take advantage of opportunities. And my promise to you is you'll set up a force field in the universe that will start to attract into your life everything that you need. If you learn everything you can learn from this seminar and from what you get here, you'll eventually reach the point where, just like I've spoken to several people here, they're already millionaires. They started off with nothing and became millionaires. And they're back here at the well to learn more things to help them to get on that fast track and move ahead faster. The critical quality is optimism. You've got to be an optimist. I have to tell you this quick story about optimism, and then we're on our way. Two little boys, Johnny and Jimmy. Johnny is a complete optimist. He's happy. He's positive. He sings. He plays jokes. He's the most popular kid in the neighborhood. He's a parent's delight. He's just not afraid of anything. And little Jimmy, however, his twin brother, they're 10 years old, is a complete pessimist. He's negative. He complains. He cries. He hurts himself. He doesn't like his food. Nobody wants to play with him. He's one of those kids you have to put a pork chop around his neck to get the dog to play with him. You know. And he's just he still wets the bed. He's a real frustration to his parents. Finally, the parents realize they've got something out of balance here. So they take the two little boys to a child psychologist. The psychologist examines the boys and comes back to the parents and says, yes, there is a real problem here. I've never seen this before. Johnny is so optimistic, it's unbelievable. It's wonderful. He's happy. He laughs. He sings. I mean, he's great, he said. He's so optimistic. He's so unafraid, he could even hurt himself. Little Jimmy, however, is so pessimistic. It's just not normal for a boy at that age to be so negative. We need to do something to bring the boys back into a greater balance. Well, Christmas is coming very shortly, so this is what they did. Christmas morning, they all gathered around the Christmas tree, and all the presents were for little Jimmy, the pessimist. Every single present. And they gave him the present one after another. They were hoping that this would really sort of blast out his thinking. And so they gave him the present, but he didn't like the color. And he didn't like the model number. And it wasn't what he asked for. It wasn't what his friend had. It wasn't what he hoped for. It wasn't what he wanted. And he had a complaint about every single present. At the end of the opening, he's sitting there surrounded by presents and wrapping paper. He bursts out in tears. Says, this is the worst Christmas he ever had in his whole life. The parents are just beside themselves. Here's little Johnny sitting there, smiling at his little brother. He says, is there anything for me? And they go, oh, yes, there's one thing for you. It's out in the garage. So they took him out to the garage, and there in the double garage, they opened up, there's an 8-foot-high pile of horse manure. They had a farmer bring it in the night before, filled the entire garage full of this horse manure. He says, geez, he said, what's that? He said, it's horse manure. He said, I've never seen so much horse manure in my whole life. Wow. Well, this is your Christmas present. Wow. Well, what do you have to say? He said, wow, I've never seen so much horse manure. And he's standing there looking at this horse manure, and the parents stand there, and they stand there, and finally the parents say, well, we're hungry, going in the house for breakfast. So I go in the house for breakfast, and they leave him there. But half an hour later, they say, Johnny hasn't come back in. They go, oh my. It didn't work for little Jimmy the pessimist, but I hope we haven't overdone it with Johnny. So they go rushing back out to the garage. They open the garage, and there's Johnny. He's diving up and down this pile of horse manure. He's burrowing in the horse. He's throwing it in the air. He's singing. He's having a fabulous time. They say, Johnny, what are you doing? He said, with all this horse manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. Now remember in life, you're going to have lots of ups and downs. You're going to have lots of horse manure. But if you just keep looking for the good, look for the valuable lesson, I promise you there's got to be a pony in there somewhere. Thank you very much. God bless you.